Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. There's never been a more interesting but also critical time in British politics, and I can't wait to bring you the biggest stories of the day with the best factual accuracy and also a few of my own opinions thrown in. We'll engage in passionate but always polite debate with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Monday to Thursday, 10 till 12 on TV, on radio and online.
King Charles will lead the Remembrance Day service for the first time as monarch as he follows in his mother's footsteps.
Good morning. It's 6 o'clock on Sunday, the 13th of November. This is Breakfast on GB News with Stephen and Anne.
We're live across the whole of the UK. We're on your TV, your radio and online. So wherever you are and whatever you're doing today, take us with you. These are your top stories.
Well, the nation will, of course, fall silent today as the King, for the first time as monarch, leads a moving Remembrance Day service. King Charles III will lay a new poppy wreath incorporating his colours, with the design paying tribute to his mother and grandfather, of course, George VI.
Well, stay with us as we remember those who cannot be with us today and reflect on the sacrifices made by our veterans and service personnel.
And the Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, vows to call out Putin's regime at the G20 meeting and says the summit will not be business as usual.
As ever, we'd love to hear from you, any of your thoughts, any of your stories this Remembrance Sunday. Drop us an email, gbviews@gbnews.uk.
I got all emotional then when you said we remember those who cannot be with us over a picture of the Queen.
It's funny, isn't
it? Yeah. It's difficult. I mean, how many of us have ever seen a Remembrance Sunday without her?
Well, the Remembrance Sunday where we remember the Queen. I know, it's extraordinary, isn't it? But I think I thought it was extraordinary last night watching the Festival of Remembrance at the Albert Hall, and when the military were cheering the King, and then the national anthem, of course. And for the first time, I was watching it in bed, I sang along to the national anthem.
Oh, good.
Because I just thought, and just to say the words
Yes.
of the King, and also I just thought was...
It's turning over another leaf, isn't it, in history, I think, in this country, accepting now the fact that we will be a nation remembering today. And one of the main people we'll be remembering is her, of course, as well.
Well, of course, that all means that the King will be leading the nation in remembrance for the very first time as monarch, as he lays a new wreath at the cenotaph.
It'll be interesting to see what it looks like. Nearly 10,000 people are taking part in the Royal British Legion's march past, paying tribute to Her late Majesty the Queen.
Well, our royal reporter, Cameron Walker, has more.
A changing of the guard. Just 9 weeks after the Queen passed away, King Charles will lead the nation in remembrance for the first time as King. A moving moment, according to royal author Katie Nicholl.
I think it will be a really poignant reminder to all of us watching, and particularly to the veteran community, that she's not here anymore. And it will be these moments, these points in the calendar where we're just so used to seeing the Queen. We're going to have to get used to having King Charles instead, and I think Remembrance Sunday is going to be one of those really nostalgic and important moments.
The late Queen was the last surviving member of the royal family to have served in the Second World War. Now her descendants will be out in force at the cenotaph to honour the millions who sacrificed their lives for our freedom. A new wreath, its ribbon bearing the King's racing colours, will be laid by His Majesty for the first time. It's expected to pay tribute to his grandfather and mother. The Queen Consort is expected to view the service from the Foreign Office balcony, and a royal household equerry will lay a wreath on her behalf. Racing colours inherited from Camilla's grandfather will echo a wreath from a previous Queen Consort, Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother. It's the poppy factory based in Richmond that has made Their Majesty's wreaths, along with 100,000 others delivered across the country. A nation united in honouring the fallen. Perhaps reflecting his commitments to the Welsh people, the Prince of Wales's wreath bears a new ribbon in Welsh red. It was previously laid by his father, featuring the Prince of Wales's feathers. Buckingham Palace has announced a long list of royals expected to attend the service, including the Princess of Wales, expected to appear on the balcony. The world wars may be confined to history books, but the war in Ukraine rages on.
Such truly terrible aggression.
As Prince of Wales, Charles publicly showed his support for Ukrainians across the Commonwealth. In an uncertain world, many look to the monarchy for stability. Cameron Walker, GB News.
Well, Cameron's here in the studio. Before he heads down to the cenotaph a little bit later on, this really is a moment of history, actually, in and of itself, Cameron, isn't it?
It certainly is. Remembrance Sunday was what the Queen considers as one of the most important events in the royal calendar. And, of course, it is now King Charles, for the first time, who will be leading the nation as monarch, as we remember those who have fallen in the First and Second World Wars and all of the conflicts since. But, of course, this year is going to be particularly poignant because we are going to be remembering Her Majesty the Queen for the first time. Of course, she was patron of the Royal British Legion for 70 years and the longest-serving Commander-in-Chief of the British Armed Forces, so it's going to be quite a moment.
So at the Royal Albert Hall last night, they made a very big tribute to her, didn't they? But they lit up the centre of the hall, didn't they, at one point with her photograph, with her picture. And there were many tributes to her. It was all about her last night, as well as, obviously, the veterans.
It was, of course. I think it's probably going to be one of the last times we see her cipher played out in quite so big detail. There was lots of archive footage that was played of Her Majesty the Queen, and in fact, one clip, the Queen was heard saying that speaking of her tremendous contribution to the armed forces have made to Britain's standing and reputation overseas. And, of course, all her family were there as well. The King, Queen Consorts, Prince and Princess of Wales, Duke and Duchess of Gloucester, the list goes on, all watching those images, those archive images of Her Majesty the Queen. And it was very much, that was the theme, I think, last night.
But which is what makes it interesting today, because this, as if they needed any reminding, and I don't think they do. However, for the members of the armed forces and the veterans, this cements the commitment of the monarch, doesn't it? Our new monarch to the armed forces.
It certainly does. He is now the Commander-in-Chief of all of the armed forces. They all swear allegiance to him in the armed forces, and it's a way, I suppose, of bringing the whole nation together, of remembering those who keep us safe, who protect our freedoms throughout the world.
I recorded it last night because I couldn't stay up late enough to watch it. Did they do the poppies all falling from the
Yes,
ceiling?
they did,
Oh.
yeah.
It breaks your heart every time you see that, doesn't it? But there were lots of other ways they were paying tribute as well, which was... It was absolutely gorgeous. And I mean, people who weren't able to watch it like me last night will be able to watch it today. But today is about the cenotaph and the march past, which is always very, very moving, because every face in that march past tells a story. Lots of widows wearing they wear their medals on the other side, don't they? You know, everybody has a really deeply emotional reason to be there.
Oh, completely. Almost 10,000 people are going to be taking part from roughly 300 organisations, and it's just going to show, yes, veterans from the Second World War who are still with us, but as you said, Anne, it's the veterans' wives, it's those who have lost loved ones during the wars. And actually, I think what's interesting, which some people have been speculating, is why members of the royal family wear more than one poppy on their lapel.
That. Yes, because last night Kate was wearing 3.
Yes.
We've seen pictures of the Queen before wearing a big cluster of poppies, but I think Camilla was only wearing one red one, but there were lots of black sequin ones on her dress. Yeah, is there significance as to the number of poppies you wear?
So there's lots of theories as to why. The Queen herself used to wear 5 poppies on Remembrance Sunday, and it is thought that that was because it represented all the services within Great Britain, so the Army, Navy, RAF, Civil Defence and women. So that's why the Queen wore 5. The Princess of Wales, Catherine, wore 3. That's because 3 of her great-grandmother's brothers were killed in the First World War, so she's remembering those 3 relatives of hers which were killed. But actually, interestingly, in 2019, Kate wore a ceramic poppy which represented the code breakers of Bletchley Park, and that is because her grandmother and, well, a couple of her relatives actually served as code breakers in Bletchley Park. It's not been confirmed by the palace, but that's the theory that people are talking about.
Presumably it is a sort of matter of choice, and they're probably consulted and they have an idea about how they'd like to wear their poppy.
Yes,
That's
exactly.
Isn't it?
Isn't it just? Cameron, I know you've got a very busy day ahead, but for now, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Any of your stories, any of your thoughts, we'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, a bit later
today.
on, we're also going to be talking about the purple poppy, which is the one that signifies the animals who've served. And there are some remarkable stories of just about everything you can think of, from horses to carrier pigeons, who have served in wars and helped people, and in many cases lost their own lives. And while it's not maybe as significant as the human suffering and loss that we mark today, it is important, isn't it?
It is.
Animals have all played their part.
They do a very important job, actually, and it's good that we don't forget that either. Anyway, again, your thoughts on that. And if you've got a purple poppy, let us know, because they're not
we can't
as easy
find one.
to get hold of, are
No,
they?
we've been trying to find one for today and we haven't been able to do so. So if you've got a purple poppy, get in touch. I might be able to do a live link to you and you can show it off to us.
Yeah. It's 10 minutes past 6. Let's bring you up to date with what else is going on today. President Biden says he's pleased with the election turnout after Democrats sealed control of Nevada. So that means, against all expectations, that they control 50 Senate seats, with the Vice President able to break ties in the chamber. So they, in effect, retain control of the Senate. But with votes still being counted, Republicans remain close to winning control of the House of Representatives.
The UK Prime Minister has been urged to crack down on UK-based firms stashing profits in tax havens. Labour claims this move would raise £7 billion a year, wanting firms with global revenues paying 15% on profits they make in other places around the world. The government have published the draft legislation. They did that in July, but the proposals are yet to be laid out in Parliament.
Ministers are planning to crack down on so-called outrageous wastes of public money while seeking billions in tax hikes and savings. The Chancellor has warned he will be playing Scrooge in the upcoming budget. I'm not sure, because
I'm not sure he's got it right, because he said he wanted to be Scrooge that saves Christmas.
Well, sort of...
But Scrooge didn't save Christmas.
Well, no, but he also said in one of the newspaper headlines last weekend he wanted to be Santa, not Scrooge.
Yeah, I think
So
he's a bit confused there. He's got his Dickens wrong.
He has. Anyway, Jeremy Hunt's thought to be considering a range of options, including an extended freeze on income tax and national insurance thresholds.
And the Health Secretary says pay demands from unions representing nurses are neither reasonable nor affordable. It comes as almost 10,000 NHS members are included in the vote on strike action in the coming days. Steve Barclay says he is resistant to negotiating on pay, with the union demanding an increase of at least 15% compared with the £1,400 rise awarded earlier this year.
Now, the Prime Minister's getting on a plane again. He's expected to fly to Bali, of all places, for the G20 summit. We can't imagine why it's being held there. Well, he'll discuss efforts to tackle the global financial crisis and call out Vladimir Putin over Russia's invasion of Ukraine.
Now, President Putin, meanwhile, is expected to skip the event and send his foreign minister instead, Sergei Lavrov.
Meanwhile, back here, Tory MPs have come out in defence of the Deputy Prime Minister, Dominic Raab, after he was accused of being aggressive towards civil servants in his role as Justice Secretary.
What's going on then? For more, let's speak to political commentator Peter Spencer. Good morning, Peter. Yes. So he's a busy man, Rishi Sunak. He's off to another conference.
He certainly is. And the G20, of course, they will call out the Russians over their filthy war in Ukraine. Got to remember the Russians were invited into this group of affluent nations in earlier and happier days when Russia was reaching out to the West and had not become, as it is now, a pariah state. So I suspect that there will be a bit of a slanging match with everyone saying, well, Putin's war sucks, and Lavrov, the Russian foreign minister, saying, well, you guys suck as well. But I think the real talking will be done behind the scenes. Remember, the Americans in recent days have been bigging up Churchill's line that Georgia is better than war. And of course, we're in a situation now where Kherson has just been liberated, and therefore the Russians might be thinking, it could be a moment to step back a little bit from all this and do a little bit of negotiating. But they're not going to say this publicly, of course, but behind the scenes, there could be a bit of progress. And remember that Biden is feeling fairly emboldened now that Donald Trump, who looked until fairly recently like being the resurgent new president, has now been dubbed by his own favourite newspaper as Trump the Dump.
It's interesting, Peter, looking at the economic global crisis. I know it seems a bit obvious in a sense, but the focus of the G20 then is to say, what, if we can sort out Russia behind closed doors, if we can sort out that situation, the rest of it is going to then slowly fall into place. Is that the thinking here?
Well, it will most certainly help. One of the big drivers of inflation in the United Kingdom, as elsewhere, of course, is rocketing energy prices and food prices, and that is down to the Putin's war. I'll come back to it. And therefore, logically, it would do us all a favour, as well as the Ukrainians and possibly the Russians, if they were to do a little bit of talking and a little bit less shooting. And so there is a certain degree of optimism, and I come back to it, that Kherson's liberation could well be a turning point in that war, and therefore the auguries as of now are pretty propitious.
Reception Lavrov will get, him going along in Putin's place?
Well, he will be the world's biggest punch bag. There's no question about it. But it is a difficult balancing act for all concerned, because if it just degenerates into a slanging match, that will not make it easier for the Russians to negotiate. Because remember, Putin's lightning strike on Kyiv was supposed to be a war that would be over in a matter of days, and he suffered reverse after reverse. He suffered, actually, whether he doesn't admit it, of course, and the Russians don't quite get it because of their wall-to-wall television propaganda, but the fact is he suffered humiliation upon humiliation. There's even been talk of maybe some kind of coup mounted against him. It's a very volatile situation in the Kremlin and in Moscow generally, and therefore it needs to be treated with a certain amount of delicacy if they're going to give Putin the chance to produce some kind of face-saving formula which will enable the hostilities to come to an end.
Peter, what do you make of the Dominic Raab situation? It's interesting that colleagues are coming out in defence of him, but we didn't get that with Gavin Williamson, did we? I mean, are we able to notice a significant difference? Might this be something that actually does go away for the Justice Secretary?
I suspect it probably will. I mean, Gavin Williamson, in suggesting that a senior civil servant should slit his throat and jump out of a window, was pretty strong stuff by anyone's standards. And remember that Priti Patel, the former Home Secretary, was also accused of being a bully. I mean, it does appear that in the top table of the Tory party, there are a fair few gobby folk around, and it's also indicative of a fairly fractious state within government. I mean, just look at Rishi Sunak himself. He was not chosen to be the leader of the Tory party, therefore Prime Minister, by the membership of the party. Tory MPs did want him to be their leader, but a third of them wanted Boris Johnson back. So far from being on honeymoon, this man is on probation.
That's an interesting point. Peter, thanks very much indeed.
I suppose history is always full of these sort of ironies, but we're wearing poppies today, and one of the main wars that we're remembering is World War II, in which we were allies with Russia. And now we're thinking of the people in Ukraine desperately trying to defend their country against Russia.
It all changed. Well,
that's history, isn't it?
But that was a case, I guess, of my enemy's enemy is my friend, wasn't it, in World War II, as far as that goes. But I know, I mean, and it's not that long ago, really, and look how things have changed. Anyway, you've got to hope for some behind. As Peter says, it's interesting. On the face of it, it's all going to be a lot of tension. They're not doing the family photo and all that sort of thing. But behind closed doors, and not even with Sergei Lavrov, it's going to be all the assistants behind closed doors. Maybe some progress could be made.
Yeah, that would be cool. It would be.
Look, we've got much more to come for you, including care homes. Have you been able to visit your loved one? We're going to be talking to the owner of a care home later on this morning. Let's look ahead to the weather. In the UK, is going to be generally dry, cloudy in the east, rain moving in for the west. So these are the details for you.
A dry but cloudy day for southwest England, with some low cloud lingering across high ground. Breezy in the west, particularly at the coasts, highs of 15.
Dry across the southeast with sunny spells, although cloudier in the north and west. Light winds and feeling mild, about 16 degrees.
And then dry throughout Wales on Sunday today, with sunny intervals and cloud mostly confined to the east. Breezy at western coasts and highs of 16.
Now, a cloudier day across the Midlands, although some sunnier spells at times, mainly in the south and west. Light winds and feeling pretty warm in any sunshine. Again, those temperatures pretty good, about 15 degrees.
A grey day, though, in the northeast, with some low cloud lingering into the afternoon. Perhaps some brighter spells in the west at times. Breezy across any high ground, highs of 13.
A fine day across southern Scotland, plenty of prolonged sunny spells. Scattered showers and cloud at times. Breezy in the west, about 14 or 15 degrees.
And then in Northern Ireland, dry mostly, with some brighter spells, but rain approaching from the west later. Breezy again, particularly at the coasts, and a maximum temperature of 15.
So a band of heavy rain and strong winds moving in from the west, staying mostly dry elsewhere. And that's your weather today.
every morning from 6 o'clock. We'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
It's 6:23. Good morning to you. You're watching and listening to Breakfast with Stephen and Anne.
And it is Remembrance Sunday, so do give us an email. Drop us an email, gbviews@gbnews.uk. Tell us what Remembrance Sunday means to you and who you're remembering. And if you're wearing a poppy, who do you wear that poppy for? Now, there are new government plans which could give relatives the legal right. It actually will be enshrined in law that they will have the right to go and see their loved ones in care homes and hospitals.
Now, although COVID-19 rules have been removed, as we know, quite some time ago, there are reports of some care facilities that even now don't let visitors in.
Now, the new Social Care Minister, Helen Waitley, says shutting out relatives showed a total lack of humanity. And this comes after she was prevented from seeing her own mother, who was critically ill earlier in the year.
Well, let's talk to David Crabtree, owner of the Crabtree Care Homes, who joins us now. Good morning to you. It's good to see you this morning, David. I mean, what do you make of all of this? I mean, our understanding is that you allow visitors in to your care homes. But why are there some rules for some and some rules for others?
Just to begin with, it's great to be on with two legends of broadcasting. Thank you. the plethora of government guidelines that were coming out week after week after week, with my favourite clown who's appearing on some other programme in the jungle somewhere, were so inconsistent, so behind the loop, that care homes eventually had to make up their own pretty much guidance. If you take Bradford, in September, 20 care homes would have had outbreaks of COVID. Now, that would be 2 or 3 residents or 2 or 3 staff, depending on what determines an outbreak in local areas. They then say, right, we will restrict visiting, pretty much like you would do for diarrhea and sickness or with flu. You limit the number of people that can contaminate and spread the disease or the virus. So we've all been left pretty much to devise what we think is right. Now, where there are care homes who do not allow, everybody is entitled to phone up safeguarding at their local authority, and a safeguarding officer will attend and has the right of enforcement to go in. And the care home is the wrong side of the law if they're refusing to allow visitors. Families are integral to our homes. What we are is a home. The saying is, residents are not in our workplace. We work in their home. So we desperately want the children to come back singing. We do want the visitors back in, but we need to be safe.
Yeah, but frankly, we've all, as a society, had to come to terms with this post-COVID world now, where, I mean, obviously we've still got the choice if we want to wear a mask or not. But it's terribly important that we all get together and that our old folk or our infirm folk see their relatives. So why do you think that some care homes still, and it looks pretty unreasonable, are still saying no to visitors when we know that it's probably now a risk worth taking?
I think, again, because of they're either misunderstanding what the rules are or they're... I don't know. I think probably because they become institutionalised and bogged down with being locked down. And what you're quite right, what we have to do is move out. Everybody's been vaccinated. Remember, they insisted that our social care staff were vaccinated against their wishes or sacked. So we've had trauma for over 2.5 years now. And I think any care home that is closed, if you really have a problem, just phone your local authority. They can insist, and they have the power to go into the home and insist that visiting is correct. The CQC are inept. They're not fit for purpose. They should be standing up and saying that this is what you've got to do. I think it's the lack of outright directive. I don't think it needs another law. We've got the law.
I mean, but how important is it then, David, from your experience? I mean, for those people who don't have relatives in care homes and don't know how it all works, how important is it for the care of those people who are living there, that they have that, not only the physical care that you provide as an organisation, but the emotional care that families provide?
One of the biggest aspects, I've been doing this for 50 years now, and I've always said that when it's a very, very difficult decision to have a relative in a care home, there is a lot of guilt attached to that decision. And therefore, it's important from both sets of people, the relative and the resident, for the mental welfare, that continuity of face, of touch, of hugs, that's tantamount to good health. It's as important as the medicine you'll be giving this morning. The cuddles that our staff give were no substitute for the cuddles of the daughter or the smile of the son or families. Care homes should be an integral family unit, not about just the resident. We have to protect staff, and the staff, social care staff, were left out by a limb during COVID. But now we have to treat COVID as flu and make sensible precautions.
Oh, David, it's really good to talk to you this morning. I have to say, with that attitude, I wouldn't mind ending up. I wouldn't mind ending up in one of your homes.
Yeah.
You can come to the family Christmas party.
I'm glad to hear there is one. Yeah. Can I just ask you one more question and watch your language on this one? What do you think of the former Health Secretary, Matt Hancock, being on that TV programme at the moment?
OK, so my opinion is not that the process of government was wrong, but that he deliberately lied. This is my opinion. That he said there was a ring of protection around care homes, knowing full well we had no PPE, we had no testing facilities, and that they deliberately discharged without a negative result. They caused the mayhem in March 2020. For him now to go in and say that he wishes to, I don't know, play the clown to pay off his divorce settlement, presumably, I have no idea. The man should not be in the post, and he doesn't represent what is great about our health service, our social care service. And he's just a bad memory, is Mr. Hancock. He's just a bad memory.
Wow, interesting.
Yes,
interesting. David, thank you very much indeed. It's really good to talk to you this morning.
It's great to talk.
Thank you.
Oh,
gosh.
Disappeared there.
Yeah.
But
interesting, coming from somebody who was on the front line. during.
Interesting, but I mean, isn't it interesting? I mean, look, I've never been to any of his homes, so I don't know what they're like. But that's the right philosophy,
It is, yeah.
isn't it? You know, they aren't living in where we work where they live. That's the right attitude.
And it's a very, very important one, but I know there are lots of care homes that don't have that or should be reminded of that sort of attitude. And we know, and it's certainly not all care homes at all, as he said, but we know that there are still relatives being prevented from going in to see their loved ones, and I cannot understand that happening.
No, but as he said, you can...
go to your local authority and demand action there.
So
but if Helen Whately herself had problems just back in July...
Well, it's not knowing, isn't it, how you take it forward. But anyway, let us know what you think. gbviews@gbnews.uk. Don't go anywhere unless you just have to make a quick cup of tea, because we've got the papers for you in just a moment.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every Friday and Sunday night from 9, it's Mark Dolan Tonight.
We're on the same page again. There's something weird happening.
Let Ian finish. Don't be such a cranky.
That mini budget was the tip of the iceberg.
And on Saturday, my show just got bigger. From 8, it's Mark Dolan's Saturday Night In.
You can't govern a country if you can't speak. Stop talking.
My God, we reached the end. I've never been early in my life. Only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. There's never been a more interesting but also critical time in British politics, and I can't wait to bring you the biggest stories of the day with the best factual accuracy and also a few of my own opinions thrown in. We'll engage in passionate but always polite debate with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Monday to Thursday, 10 till 12 on TV, on radio and online.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Oh, welcome back. You're watching and listening to Breakfast with Stephen and Anne. It's very good to have you with us today.
And it's very nearly 6:35. Should we take a look at today's front pages? The Sunday Times is leading with the liberation of the city of Kherson in Ukraine. It was the only regional capital captured by the Russians in this year's invasion.
Sunday Telegraph leads with the plans, a 10-point plan to tackle the migrant crisis to end what they're calling Hotel Britain.
In the Mirror, Matt Hancock's local vicar speaks out he says he hasn't got a prayer. I don't know. A very good friend of mine last night said she thought he would win.
Oh, there you go. Daily Star Sunday is also ripping into Mr. Hancock for his appearance on the show.
You can't get away from him at the moment, I'm afraid.
No. Headlines everywhere. Let's go through those papers in a bit more detail with broadcaster Claire Muldoon and former head of counter-terrorism at the MOD, Major General Chip Chapman. Good to see you both this morning.
Thank you.
Claire, let's start with the Telegraph, should we, in Hotel Britain?
Yeah, well, let's start with the actual front pages. And you would never believe in a month of Sundays that this was Remembrance Sunday, because there's very little mention on any of the front pages, apart from the beautiful picture of Princess of Wales, Kate there on the Telegraph. Let's move on. So the 10-point migration plan to end Hotel Britain. Do you know how much this is costing the UK taxpayer per day?
Oh, it's like 6 million quid.
£5.8 billion, £1 million. It's just shocking. And yet, on Remembrance Sunday, can't we even think of our sick and retired servicemen and women that, you know, some of them are facing housing crisis, you know, some of our, you know, we should be sorting out our own lives, our own society.
I drove past this morning, not far from here, someone who was stood at traffic lights with a big sign saying "Former soldier, need food, need home." You know.
No.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that is the reality that we're facing, and yet £5.8 million a day to fuel this migration of Albanians, mostly 30%, are now saying that they want asylum. And I'm sorry, this 10-point migration plan to enter Britain has come too late.
Isn't it always those with the loudest voice that gets heard most? And in this case, the migrants, and particularly the Albanians as well, they've got all of these human rights lawyers on their side. And our veterans haven't.
Worse than that, Anne, than having the human rights lawyers, because the lawyers, as you know, can only act if there is a case to be heard and to be brought and be instructed by. However, there's these people here. Albania is not a war-torn country. They're not seeking asylum because of any prejudice they would face at home. It needs to stop. They're fueling the business model that's been set up by the crooks that are peddling women and children and young defenceless people over with their mobile phones over into this country, and it's wrong. Now, don't get me wrong, if there's someone who needs help fleeing Afghanistan because of the state we left that in with the West, then fine. We need to search, we need to help asylum seekers, valid asylum seekers, not these criminals.
Chip, what's the Mail on Sunday got?
Yeah, the front page of the Mail on Sunday is Albanians' Poppy Day insult to Churchill, which is interesting, given what Claire said, of course, because we've got currently the Albanians, who we seem to revile, the Poppy, which we revere, and Churchill, which we revere. But actually, it's slightly more interesting in a sense, because these were Albanians who weren't protesting on Armistice Day, the 11th. They're not protesting today on Remembrance Day. They were protesting yesterday. So the question is this a legitimate protest? Then the answer is we fought wars for this to be legitimate protest. And were these the asylum seekers? No, they're not. These are people who were here and are here legitimately. So the real question here is, what were they protesting about?
Yes.
And they're really protesting about some of the language and demonisation of the Albanian community. And this is why we have to be very careful sometimes about the language we use. So these are people who do pay their taxes. They are not the people that Claire was referring to. Where I absolutely agree with Claire, though, is, of course, where there's money to be made, that's where serious organised crime comes in. And that is the business model which Claire was referring to, which we need to break.
You see, that's very interesting, though, isn't it? Because we do, and, you know, we do it as individuals. We end up saying, well, all Albanians are bad. It's like when the virus broke out and because Trump started going on about the China virus, that actually there were Chinese people in this country being attacked.
Yeah.
We've got to be... You said the language is so important here, actually.
Yeah, and, you know, because we do a lot of psychological sort of stuff in counter-terrorist, and this is sort of classic framing bias in the way that the headline is written. No, it's done all the time. That's not going to change. But sometimes we have to be slightly careful about this.
But particularly, though, that they targeted the Churchill statue doesn't endear them, certainly to the press, and doesn't endear them to anyone. I mean, that's surely where they went wrong. Their legitimate right to protest, I think we would all defend. But it's where they insult Churchill.
They wrapped a flag around it.
They're begging. Yes, it wasn't actually what I thought. They
didn't spray it.
Drape it over
They
him.
wrapped a flag around the pedestal. I don't think
But they knew that would
is...
get them noticed. But unfortunately, it's got them the worst sort of front page, hasn't it? If you look at that, that's the Daily Mail sort of crying out against Albanians, isn't it, really?
Yeah,
Well, that's the problem. That's what mainstream media often does. I mean, there was a witch hunt to get Boris Johnson out. He's out. You know, there's a witch hunt for, the Daily Fail, as we sometimes refer to it. And it's the optic, the dangerous language, the loaded language that is often used to demonise. And it's that othering of people that we can't have.
And I think the other thing is here, they were really protesting for their respect for human rights after the language about invasion of illegal immigrants. Now, actually, although we've had Brexit, what most people don't realise is that we are still part of the Council of Europe. The Council of Europe has three parts. It's to do with human rights, democracy and the rule of law. We are still a constituent of that. The only nation which has been kicked out of that this year is Russia. That is separate than the Brexit issue.
Yeah. OK, let's have a look at everyone's favourite politician in the Sunday Mirror, Claire.
Gosh, front page of the Mirror. Hancock hasn't got a prayer. I am watching it. I am. I love it. I don't really have a lot of time for Matt Hancock, and every time I see him, I'm either watching it through my fingers for sheer
cringiness.
How can he be that bad? I am just, and this is a story here, but his local vicar from his constituency has said he's clearly neglected his constituents by going into the jungle. I think he's abdicated his responsibility as an MP, and I think there's more than the whip that ought to be removed here from Matt Hancock.
Before.
It doesn't make it okay, does it?
No, but why is there more of an outcry about this, abdicating his responsibility with this than there was someone saying Nadine Dorries did?
Do you know why? Because we've come through a pandemic. He was in charge of health during that pandemic. Whether you like it or not, people are still angry at him for the perceived break of COVID rules when people couldn't attend funerals, couldn't attend deathbeds, couldn't hug anyone. And he was caught with a magic camera, a secret camera, having an affair. And that's what made him go. It was the fact he was caught. And that's what I'm really upset about. And I agree with the vicar of his constituents in Suffolk. And they say our MP has neglected his voters. Get him out of there. But they won't. And I don't want him to go.
No, and the viewers are voting him into every trial, Bush-Tucker trial, aren't they?
As they did.
And a lot of other viewers are complaining now that it's simply become the Matt Hancock show, and they're a bit fed up with him.
But I don't know, but does anyone else watch it?
No.
Am I the only one?
No, but I was talking to my best friend last night, and she said it is absolutely gripping, and she's convinced he'll win, because he's just going into all of these awful trials, and he is succeeding.
But it's the way he interprets his actions from the past. I'm here because I want to show everyone I'm kind of like normal. MPs of this, do not wave a banner for the legitimacy of MPs' behaviour, 1, 2, your behaviour in the past, and 3, what you want of it when you're out.
Why are you watching it then?
I love it. I love it. I don't
like watching people suffer.
I don't love... Well...
I was saying yesterday that I don't understand why there's a fascination with watching people suffer, and someone tweeted me and said, well, it's always been the case. Look at gladiators.
Yes.
But it's like that. We want to see other people suffer.
They're getting paid for it.
Well, they're getting paid.
They're so narcissistic and so proud and so egotistical that they think this behaviour is the norm. And to be honest with you, the cesspit of politics in the Houses of Commons, I don't think there's much difference.
No, I was going to say, he's used to a cesspit.
He's used to it.
Dear, oh dear.
Ouch.
Well, let's talk about Rishi Sunak now, who is apparently reviving Thatcherism.
Yeah, so the front page of the Express is Rishi revives Thatcherism to rescue UK. There's no alternative to using a Thatcher phrase as well as reviving the UK. So this is really about the Chancellor saying that there is no alternative to the eye-watering package of tax hikes and spending cuts, which he'll announce on Thursday. I think the key thing, actually, about the article is that how long the freezes are going to go on, which will affect everyone, really. So, you will start paying tax until, which is obviously at £12,570 now. That's frozen until April 26. So even if you get a pay rise, you're effectively going to lose some money. The higher rate tax will remain at £50,270 until the same 2026. So everyone is going to get poorer, really, over the next few years, particularly because the economy shrunk by 0.2% in the last quarter, and we're going to be in 2 years of recession.
But it's a comparatively painless way of... I mean, not painless as far as our pay pockets go, but painless as far as the government goes, because they say, well, they're not raising taxes, are they? They're just not altering the threshold.
That's
so
right.
They get more revenue without actually putting taxes up.
Yeah, and I think one of the key phrases that they're using is this is the first budget where they're not pulling rabbits out of hats. So it's a sort of realism measures from the government to plug
They keep warning us.
black hole.
These dire warnings, though. It's making you dread Thursday, isn't it?
Oh, I think everyone, I think your viewers, your listeners, certainly I am. I'm just so sick of everything that's happening in the world right now. It's so awful. You've got the Trump administration, are we going to run? Will we run? and all the American
Less likely
politics.
to overnight, they reckon.
Huh?
They reckon it's less likely.
Yes. And he was the one Trump even called Rick Santos sanctimonious or something.
Yeah.
I mean, come on, the geopolitics in this country and abroad. COP27, now the G20.
Where is it? In Bali.
Bali.
It's very nice.
Nice
Though
work
to be
if
fair, the G20, as we're hearing from Peter Spencer earlier on, I mean, you'll understand a lot of this, Chip, but better than the rest of us. It's what happens behind closed doors at these meetings, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And of course, I'm interested in geopolitics because that's what's driving the world at the moment. And one of the things you can say about the last 8 months is that we used to think that economic dependency and globalisation, which is all G7, G20 is about, means that we'd never go to war again. But politicians are actually about power and extending their power. They are not accountants. They are not spreadsheet managers. And that's what we've seen with Putin since February.
It's just about power. They just... Because you always wonder, don't you, why do countries go to war? What's
power
it
and
about?
narcissism and control, that's
It's all
it.
about power.
It's not really. We always go back to the great philosophers. For us, it's Thucydides. You go to war from one of 3 reasons: fear, honour or interest, vital interest. No other reason.
Well, interest is pride and control, surely.
Vital interest.
Yeah.
Putin saw his vital interest as to regain spheres of influence
Land
and
grab.
lost territory. That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, interesting, isn't it? You see, this is why you need a military person on.
That's why I was musing about how ironic it is that we're wearing poppies, we're remembering particularly the recent world wars, when we were allies with the Russians. And now we're going to be remembering the Ukraine dead and people like that, people who are fighting so vigilantly. And suddenly the Russians are, again, enemies. But I guess that's history.
Well, one of the things for me is not only do we remember today, but for someone who was fairly senior like me and dealt at the political-military interface, it's actually to remind politicians that you should only go to war for very, very good vital interests, because the consequences of war, as we've seen in Ukraine, 100,000 casualties on the Ukraine side, 100,000 on the Russian side, they are severe. So it should not be entered into lightly.
No, very good point. And actually, that was rammed home last night. If you did see the Festival of Remembrance, when they focused on one particular couple who lost their son in a little video clip, and then they and a number of other people who'd lost people all entered the Albert Hall to a round of applause, and that was one of the most moving parts of last night. You can't remember the individual stories that follow on from conflict. Claire, let's have a look at charities, because when there's an economic downturn, charities always suffer.
Yeah, so the view from the people, the Sunday People today, is charities hit by Christmas blackout. And what they're saying, they've gone over the country, all over the country, and there's about 3 or 4 people who spent thousands of pounds on outdoor lights and decorations for their home. And what they do is they light them up every year at Christmas time, and people come and they give money, and they have they raise money for charity. But there's a twofold impact here. 1, the footfall, but 2, the fact of the energy crisis. They cannot afford to do that anymore. So there's going to be charities that will withdraw. Some of the amounts go up to £5,000 that will not go to the charities now. Now, this is often overlooked when everyone talks about the cost of living crisis, food banks, etc., because we are all under the cosh at the moment. We all are watching what we're doing, what we're spending, etc., and often charities, the charitable payments are often the first to go from budgets.
Yeah.
From household budgets.
Of course they are, because you think charity begins at home. I've got to feed my kids before anyone else.
Exactly. So they're going to feel the pinch, and people don't realise the impact of cost of living crisis. They don't realise the impact of this until it actually happens. And I think it's, I think it could be tacky, it could be whatever, but it's still brightening up the area.
Oh, yes.
It's quite nice to go and see, and it's a bit of fun. It's a bit of kitsch, but we won't be having it as much this year.
I'll tell you what I don't like, and we see it on our strap there, and it's on the front of the paper, Xmas.
No, I hate Xmas.
Yes.
It's Christmas.
We should ban Xmas.
Yeah, I quite agree.
Don't like it as a...
Get rid of the X.
Do you know where it comes from, though?
Newspapers, I've always thought it was newspapers because it was an easy headline.
Is it not Christ's cross?
No, it's not.
It's not.
I think it's Hebrew, though someone might correct me, and it's an X with a J through it, in effect, what looks like a J,
Yeah.
which is Hebrew or something similar for Christ.
Oh. Well, that's
So
in the
that's-
altars, the Catholic altars. It's like that.
Oh, well, that's it. That
Yeah.
means Christ, yeah.
Yeah.
So there you go. Yeah. I remember that from a service given when I was a Cub Scout. And that's what the vicar told
Do you know what else should be banned?
What?
Funny, humorous stamps at Christmas. They should have a nativity, always.
Yes. Oh, do you know what? I agree with that. I agree.
And let's get back to sending Christmas cards.
I quite agree with that.
The cost of living crisis doesn't allow us to do that
No,
anymore.
and there may be a
because
postal strike.
Cost of the stamp.
Well, it's nearly £1 a stamp now, isn't it?
85 or 86
idea.
pence for a first-class stamp.
But it is lovely to receive Christmas cards.
It is.
Isn't it?
It really
Why are
is.
people not doing it now?
No.
They're sending emails.
Oh, I don't like
Or
those.
gifts.
Or
cards, I don't
we're not
like.
sending cards this year because we're giving a donation to charity.
Oh, I hate that. Buy charity Christmas cards. That's what I do.
With a nativity scene. Please.
With a nativity scene.
Yeah, absolutely.
There you go. Let us know what you think about that one. GBviews at gbnews.uk. Claire, Chip, thank you both very much indeed. We'll catch up with you a little bit later on.
Bob's been in touch. He says, our little dog Billy wears a purple poppy in memory of all the animals and birds who served. It's made of wool, and one of our friends got it on the internet from a lady who makes them. He also wears a metal red poppy. It's
Yeah.
nice to know, because we are going to be talking about that a bit later. It's not only people who served, it's also animals.
Yeah,
and they are
those
remembered.
Service animals did incredible work, actually. I know they don't get a choice in it all, but it's nice that they're marked and remembered too. Now, King Charles is reportedly giving low-earning royal staff a bonus from his own private income to help them cope with the cost of living.
Yeah. Staff earning under 30 grand will receive a one-off £600 payment on top of this month's salary. Higher earners will get progressively less.
Well, it comes as the UK is expected to enter a long recession and, of course, as you know, we have that soaring inflation rate.
Yes, of course. Well, joining us now is Grant Harold, who used to be the butler to the King when he was the Prince of Wales. Very good morning to you. Has Prince Charles ever done this in the past?
Good morning. I wasn't surprised at this because, I remember a few years ago there was a programme about the Duke of Cornwall as he was then, and I remember one of his tenants, or a few of them, were going through difficult times. I can't remember the situation, but I remember them actually saying that he had given them money, so much money to kind of help them get by. So he has done this kind of thing, because the side that people maybe don't say that, obviously we see him as now as the king, undertaking all the kind of duties that he does as such. But what they don't see is behind the scenes, he's also got this very caring, compassionate side. He worries about people, he cares about people, and where and when he can, he does things like this. So I wasn't hugely surprised at this news, but obviously it's great to hear it because it shows that in this difficult time, somebody like him is doing something to help his team.
Are you surprised it's come out then? Because, I very much doubt the palace has made it public.
I was surprised at that, because normally you don't hear these kind of things unless they want people to be aware. And yes, sometimes, as we all know, that things are released because they want people to be aware of what's going on and the things they're doing. And they have to be very, every year we're aware of the royal accounts, we're aware of what they spend. So I'm sure we would have heard about it at some point. But it's possible that somebody's maybe obviously been excited about the news, told a few friends, and before we know it, here we are discussing it. But it's great because it once again, it shows that side to the royal family that sometimes you don't hear about. And as I've said in the past, even with myself, not with money, but I remember seeing that kind of compassionate side with both of them over the years. And it used to always kind of make me smile, thinking I'm there working for them, but yet they would do things for me that you wouldn't expect somebody like that to do.
Maybe it's a very subtle hint to government. Who knows? He does that sort of thing, doesn't he? What did you think last night of seeing him in the Festival of Remembrance and, of course, today? First time ever as king.
It's quite moving, isn't it, Anne? I think everybody will agree. It's wonderful to see him stepping up now, taking this role on. But I think we'll all agree that part of us still remember the Queen standing there, and it's quite, for me and my other colleagues or former colleagues, we've spoke about it, and it's still really strange seeing him now in that role. It's still weird to think of him as the king, but he seems to be doing an amazing job of it, which is not surprising. And I think today, a lot of people are going to be watching him, remembering his mother, and I'm sure sure she's somewhere looking down, very proud of the fact that he's picked up where she left off and carrying on. And it is, again, for him, it's quite a difficult day as well, because he's obviously served and he's aware of how this is a really important day to millions of us.
Yeah, absolutely, Grant. Good to talk to you. As always, thank you very much.
Likewise. Thank you.
Don't go anywhere. We're all wearing our poppies, of course, this Remembrance Sunday. But what do you know about a purple poppy? We're going to be exploring that in a couple of minutes. Let's look ahead to the weather. In the UK, is going to be generally dry, cloudy in the east, rain moving in for the west. So these are the details for you.
A dry but cloudy day for southwest England, with some low cloud lingering across high ground. Breezy in the west, particularly at the coasts, highs of 15.
Dry across the southeast with sunny spells, although cloudier in the north and west. Light winds and feeling mild, about 16 degrees.
And then dry throughout Wales on Sunday today, with sunny intervals and cloud mostly confined to the east. Breezy at western coasts and highs of 16.
Now, a cloudier day across the Midlands, although some sunnier spells at times, mainly in the south and west. Light winds and feeling pretty warm in any sunshine. Again, those temperatures pretty good, about 15 degrees.
A grey day, though, in the northeast, with some low cloud lingering into the afternoon. Perhaps some brighter spells in the west at times. Breezy across any high ground, highs of 13.
A fine day across southern Scotland, plenty of prolonged sunny spells. Scattered showers and cloud at times. Breezy in the west, about 14 or 15 degrees.
And then in Northern Ireland, dry mostly, with some brighter spells, but rain approaching from the west later. Breezy again, particularly at the coasts, and a maximum temperature of 15.
So a band of heavy rain and strong winds moving in from the west, staying mostly dry elsewhere. And that's your weather today.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club. Oh my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
We are GB News.
And we'd like to say thank you
to each and every one of you
for helping our great nation
find its voice.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Across England, Scotland,
Wales and Northern Ireland. On TV,
on radio
and online.
We're proud to be
the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
On the Mark Stein Show, we cover the stories a lot of people are scared even to mention. The stuff that really matters with some of the world's biggest thinkers.
Now is his opportunity to kind of take the steering wheel of history.
Break away from the flop at 8 o'clock on GB News with the Mark Stein Show.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Dubes & Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Dubes & Kerr.
King Charles will lead the Remembrance Day service for the first time as monarch, as he follows in his mother's footsteps.
Good morning to you. It's 7 o'clock. It's Sunday, the 13th of November. This is Breakfast on GB News with Stephen and Anne.
And on this Remembrance Sunday, we're live across the whole of the UK, on both your TV and your radio. Wherever you are, you can take us with you. If you're out at a Remembrance Day service, at a cenotaph, at a war memorial, you can still watch us on the app. Here are your top stories this morning.
Well, the nation will fall silent today as the King, for the first time as monarch, leads a Remembrance Day service. King Charles III will lay a new poppy wreath incorporating his colours, with a design paying tribute to his mother and his grandfather, King George VI.
And do stay with us as we remember those who can't be with us today and reflect on the sacrifices made by our veterans and service personnel.
The Prime Minister vows to call out Putin's regime at the G20 meeting, which he's off to today. He says the summit will not be business as usual.
And as ever, you can join in any of our discussions and tell us what you're up to today, where you're going, how you're going to spend your Remembrance Day. Email us at gbviews@gbnews.uk.
So the King will lead the nation in remembrance for the first time as monarch today, and he'll lay his new wreath at the Cenotaph.
Nearly 10,000 people are going to take part in the Royal British Legion's march past, paying tribute to Her late Majesty the Queen.
Well, let's talk now to the Countess Bathurst, who's founder and chairman of the National Foundation for Retired Service Animals. Good morning to you. It's very, very good.
Good morning. How are you?
Well, we've been talking, obviously, as we do at this time of year, about poppies and the red poppies, but tell us about the purple poppies and how we need to actually remember those service animals who work for and often gave their lives for this country.
Yes, well, the purple poppy is an extremely important emblem. It was founded actually in 2016. The Murphy's Army Purple Poppy campaign was when it really came to the fore. Purple has always been used as a colour of remembrance. But as you can see, Gracie this morning is sporting her purple poppy. And it's very much in remembrance of the animals who have given their all in times of conflict.
As well, isn't it? Not just dogs, as we can see. I mean, everything almost from horses to carrier pigeons.
Well, it is. I mean, horses played a huge role in times of conflict. And of course, you know, we remember the First World War. But it's also over millennia. I mean, you think of the Battle of Waterloo, battles going further back. Horses have been an extraordinarily important part of... you go down, Gracie. Horses have been an extraordinarily important part of conflict because of the job that they have done. And of course, you've got dogs with messengering, you've got pigeons messengering, you've got dogs comforting wounded soldiers. Their role is enormous.
I'm a great animal lover, so I'm asking this just to play the other side of the coin, if you like, because there will be some people thinking, well, do we need to pay tribute to these animals because they're not doing it themselves? They have no sense of service or sacrifice, do they? They're doing what they are required to do by their human masters.
Stephen, I think you've got it just there. You say that they are not aware of what they're doing, whereas most soldiers and humans, we have the emotional side of what we're doing, and we're very aware of what we're doing. Yet dogs and horses, carrier pigeons, whatever animal that may be, they don't know where they're going. So if you can imagine in a time of conflict, you've got shells going off, you've got sniper fire, you've got noise and chaos all around you. As human beings, we know what that means. We know that it's because we're being shot at. Whereas if you can imagine a horse in the First World War at the Battle of Ypres, for instance, they would just be absolutely terrified, and they don't have the choice as to why they're going to war. They're just taken there. And so I think that we do need to acknowledge the part that they have played, which has been enormous.
Yeah, because many of them have been given medals for outstanding service.
Oh,
and
the
you think
Dickin Medal.
The Dickin Medal, that's right. And
yes.
I mean, they may not know why they're in a war situation, but they do have this instinct to help save human beings, their carers, or somebody like that. I mean, I remember hearing a story of a dog who dodged gunfire himself to go and rescue his human companion and was given a medal. I mean, they are remarkable from that point of view.
They are. You're talking about the PDSA Dickens Medal, which has been awarded to a number of animals. And yes, they do. I mean, animals have a sort of a natural, caring streak in them, I suppose, a gene. And of course, if they are attached emotionally to a human being, dogs are very protective and they will go through anything to protect the one that they love. And I think that it's very telling when you hear stories like that. Just more recently in the campaigns in Iraq and elsewhere, where you've got the sniffer bomb dogs who are detecting explosive and who have, in fact, given the ultimate sacrifice. It's what they're trained to do. It's what they love doing, but they don't have the choice.
Why don't we see more purple poppies about? I mean, we were both saying this morning, we wouldn't know where to buy one.
Well, I can help you there, Stephen. Murphy's Army Purple Poppy campaign, which is online. You can buy them there, and as you can see behind me, there's my lovely purple poppy wreath, which I treasure and I always have up at this time of year. But they are a wonderful charity, and they actually raise money for charities that help current service animals. And indeed, they have very kindly chosen the National Foundation for Retired Service Animals, our charity, this year. So we have a huge link with them.
And do you know what? We're just fascinated. As much as we're listening to you, because we are, I promise you, we've got a very close eye on Gracie there, who seems to be enjoying. I mean, it's lovely to see that relationship, actually. And it highlights what you're saying so beautifully.
She is. She's my little soulmate. But she's also probably wanting her breakfast, aren't you?
We've been talking so much
but also, I mean, I think Stephen and Anne, what we also need to remember is our current serving animals, and they're not just in the military, but also we've got the wonderful police dogs, which we help, fire dogs, prison dogs, which a lot of people don't know that they're there, and of course our wonderful border force dogs that protect our borders.
Can I just ask you as well what humans you're remembering today?
Oh, I've got my one. Well, I've most of my distant relations, or past relations, shall we say, not distant at all, they're very close. My father was in India at the end of the Second World War. My uncle was in the Green Howards. My other uncle was in the army. Yes, that's Uncle Jeff with my great-grandmother. So they, oh yes, there's my aunt. She was in the WAF. She was a lovely lady. Yes, that's my father, looking very skinny and very young, just before he went to officer training camp. And yes, that's my grandfather, off to that was in the First World War. And that's Uncle Jeff again. Wasn't he handsome?
Very, very. So you'll be remembering them particularly today.
Oh, yes, absolutely. My grandfather was mentioned in dispatches at the Battle of Ypres, which is why I specifically mentioned that battle. It has a very special personal connection with me. But yes, I should be very much remembering them today.
Well, look, Countess Bathurst and Gracie,
yes. It's
been lovely to see you both this morning. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
It's been lovely to talk to you. Thank you so much.
It reminds me of a story of my grandmother, because I'm from a farming family on my father's side. And obviously in the First World War, a lot of their horses went out to war. And when they came back, the horses came back and were back on the farm, but whenever there was thunder, it spooked them.
Yeah.
Because it sounded like
gunfire. Of course.
Really spooked the horses. But they were fine before they went to war. When they came back, it was a problem.
They'd got PTSD.
Well, yeah, in effect. Who are you remembering today? You always ask people who they're thinking about today.
Oh,
who
yeah.
Are you going to be thinking about?
Oh, my mum and dad. My dad didn't serve in the military, but he still served. I've told you before, he invented radar. Not just him. There were a few other people involved as well. Yes, I particularly think of him because he wanted to serve. He desperately wanted to go into the RAF and fly Spitfires and was prevented from doing so because he had a science degree. And they told him he had to go and do important war work. And he was really fed up about it.
But which he clearly did.
He did, absolutely, yeah. And I'm writing a book about him and the other radar, the other people who basically invented radar, helped save the war for us every bit as much as the heroes at Bletchley Park. But their story is largely untold. And they were all like that. They were all brought up They had to keep it totally secret, their war work. And after the war, they never spoke about it because of the Official Secrets Act. And in fact, they had to tell their own family lies about what they did. So they, for instance, if they were asked, what did you do in the war, Daddy? You were trained to just sort of say, well, I worked in a factory and made bits for Spitfires or something like that. And a lot of, I've had so many letters from a lot of the sons and daughters of those people who said, we were never told that our father was a radar hero, and we were always disappointed that he wasn't a hero because we never knew what he did. So these stories still have to be told, don't they?
They do. It's hugely important, actually.
And who else are you remembering?
Oh, I will be remembering Fusilier Samuel Flint, who my brother-in-law, actually, who died in Afghanistan at the tender age of 21, 11 years ago.
And am I allowed to tell people that your husband was in the Royal Albert Hall last night?
He was.
And we've actually got a picture of him in his splendiferousness, because he was part of that...
he was part of the tribute to Her Majesty the Queen.
Yeah, the sort of line-up.
So, yes, he was in that, and it was very important because he's leaving the army next year, and it was very important for him to take part in that today, because he joined because of Sam being killed. And his sort of last big hurrah in the army, if you like, is being able to pay tribute to his younger brother.
Can we show that picture if we got the picture? We've actually got the moving picture that we use in the headlines.
The headline sequence.
I don't know if a computer can pull it out of the...
I don't know. These things get
digital
bin. They get very complicated.
Yeah, there we are. No, yeah, it was the clip just before that, actually, I think.
Someone said, is it one of those guys? No, it's not. I'm not married to a Chelsea pensioner.
No, you're not.
But,
no. Even though we love the Chelsea pensioners.
We do love the Chelsea pensioners.
They are of a certain age.
But there you go. But anyway, so it was hugely important for him to be there last night. And for all these, there was a number of them from the Household Cavalry there, and I know a number of them, as you'd imagine. And for them all to be involved.
Here we are. Now we look here. You see the
in the cap with the braids on.
Yeah.
Just a little.
We'll have to just show that. No, we'll whiz through it again once more.
Just a little tiny clip of him there, but it was an immensely proud moment for me watching that.
And it must have been for him.
Night. Oh, absolutely.
Have you spoken to him since?
Oh yes. I had a video call last night when they were.
And was he absolutely chuffed at being able to do that, to be there?
Yeah, it's very important. Well, and for I mean, you know what it's like for the military. That service is so important, and respect for the Queen and now for the King is so important. And so to be involved in something like that is a career highlight, actually, for everyone involved.
He will have that forever, that moment, won't he? That's really amazing. Well, brilliant. Well done to him.
Yeah, so it's lovely. But anyway, think of Sam today.
Yes, of course.
Now, it's 13 minutes past 7. Let's bring you up to date with some of the other stories. And the Prime Minister has been urged to crack down on UK-based firms stashing profits in tax havens. Labour says the move would raise £7 billion a year, wanting firms with global revenues paying 15% on any profits they make in other places around the world. The government published the legislation in July, the draft legislation. It's yet to be laid in Parliament because of all the hoo-ha that's happened since then.
And ministers are planning to crack down on so-called outrageous wastes of public money while seeking billions in tax hikes and savings. Meanwhile, the Chancellor has warned that he's going to be playing Scrooge. With the upcoming autumn budget, Jeremy Hunt is thought to be considering a range of options, including an extended freeze on income tax and national insurance thresholds.
The Health Secretary says pay demands from unions representing nurses are not reasonable or affordable. It comes after 10,000 NHS members are apparently included in that strike action, which is expected in the coming days. Steve Barclay says he's resistant to negotiating on pay, with the union demanding an increase of at least 15%.
And the Immigration Minister has insisted that to reduce the number of asylum seekers coming to the UK, so-called Hotel Britain, must end. He's Robert Jenrick, and he says it's necessary to move towards more basic accommodation, as opposed to what he described as luxury rooms. And he claimed the UK's generosity towards refugees is being abused by people skipping the queue via small boats across the Channel.
Well, the Prime Minister then, we're talking a lot of politics in those headlines, wasn't it?
It was like an announcement from Downing Street.
Wasn't it just? Anyway, the PM himself is not going to be in Downing Street because he's flying to the G20 summit, which, believe it or not, is in Bali.
It's tough work, isn't it, if you can
Bali?
get it?
Why Bali? It's not in the I mean, Bali, for heaven's sakes, I think I'd love to go to Bali. Maybe I should become a
I
politician.
suppose Indonesia is part of the G20, isn't it?
Well, yes,
And they have to go to different locations each time.
They do. It seems a little bit unfair when it's miserable.
And
here.
the weather's awful at the moment in Britain, so maybe they just want to go somewhere nice. No, I'm trivialising. I'm sure it's a desperately important.
Well, yeah, well, it is important because they're going to be talking about efforts to tackle the global financial crisis and calling out, so we're told, Vladimir Putin over Russia's invasion of Ukraine.
I wonder if he'll do that officially. President Putin is going to skip the event, and instead he's sending his foreign minister, Sergei Lavrov, instead.
Well, meanwhile, back home, Tory MPs have come out in defence of the Deputy Prime Minister, Dominic Raab, after he was being accused of aggression towards civil servants in the Justice Department.
So let's talk now to GB News' political reporter, Catherine Forster, who must be very busy because there's so much going on at the moment, isn't there?
There really is.
Yeah.
There really is.
Any idea why it's in Bali? Just doesn't look terribly good, the optics, do they?
No, but I mean, in fairness to them, they're not going to get to see much, are they? They're not really going to be lying on their lounges. They are going to be working. They're going to jet in, they're going to have loads of meetings, and they're going to leave. So Rishi Sunak is flying out today. It's a 2-day summit. He will then, I think, have a 17-hour flight back. Will arrive back at 6 o'clock on Thursday morning, just in time for the autumn statement. So probably not that much sleep. But obviously, big event on the world stage. He's going to be very much pushing the we must call Vladimir Putin out for the terrible aggression in Ukraine. How
do you think he'll do that, though?
He's expected to... He's making a speech on Tuesday. He's expected to call him out then. And, of course, this will be the focus for the G20, won't it? Because one of their members has invaded a neighbouring country, and the effects that it's having, not just on Ukraine, but around the world, are huge in terms of pushing all our prices up for energy and food. So, obviously, there's usually the family photo. That apparently is not going to happen because nobody wants to stand next to Sergei Lavrov, the Russian foreign minister. Of course, Vladimir Putin is going. Sergei Lavrov tends to always look grumpy at the best of times and has been known to walk out, hasn't he, of these things. No one wants to stand next to him, unsurprisingly. But obviously, we'll get pictures, won't we? President Joe Biden is going, President Emmanuel Macron of France, President Xi Jinping from China, among the more high-profile people visiting. So it is a big event and another opportunity for the Prime Minister.
And it's interesting, isn't it? Because whatever happens with Russian diplomats behind closed doors, if you've got people like Xi Jinping there, it's also talking to people like China who can put pressure on Russia. So, I mean, diplomatically, actually, quite a lot could happen here.
Yes.
Potentially.
Potentially, because China have been, well... Vladimir Putin quickly found other markets, didn't he, for his energy, China, India, and it's whether China will start to pivot back and away from seeing which way the wind is blowing. And, of course, obviously tensions with China and the West, the UK, the US particularly as well. So some really difficult dynamics, but it will be interesting to see what...
I mean, a lot of people I know watching now will probably say, isn't it just a waste? I mean, everyone's going to have to fly in to Bali, fly out again. It's not very green. They could do it by Zoom. But actually, it's quite important for these world leaders to actually get to know each other, isn't it?
People will say that, and people obviously would have said that over COP27 as well. But I think you can't beat, as we found out when we were working from home over Zoom, it's not the same, is it, as physically meeting somebody, physically shaking somebody's hand, meeting somebody in person. And I think often you do get breakthroughs, don't you, when personal relationships are formed face-to-face.
Yeah, well, it's going to be a very interesting one to watch, actually, more this year than any other, I think, for a long time. Anyway, Catherine, for now, thank you very much indeed. We were talking earlier in the paper review about these Albanians who were protesting in London yesterday, and they did put a Albanian flag on the plinth of Churchill.
Yes.
Now, the Mail on Sunday has gone crackers about it, saying it's an insult to Churchill. Chip Chapman was pointing out that it wasn't done on Remembrance Sunday, it was done yesterday, and it wasn't an insult to Churchill, it was just them having a protest about the way Albanians are being talked about, and these were legal migrants, people who legally have the right to be here. Bernard's been in touch and said they have no right to protest in our country. Let them protest in their own country. Well, Bernard, they do have.
Yeah,
I mean,
they
do have the right to protest here.
Yeah.
And you know, and whereas I understand some frustration, I think this is where we've got to be very careful. You know, we've got the right to protest.
But they weren't disrespecting Churchill's statue.
No, they weren't.
Actually, when I heard about it on the radio, before I
Sounded
actually saw
awful.
the picture, yeah, I thought they had sort of laid it all over Churchill's statue, and the whole thing was about disrespecting Churchill. And actually, it didn't seem to be so. When you actually see the pictures, it wasn't like that at all. No. And that's the danger, isn't it?
I think we've got to be.
You can jump to conclusions that actually weren't there.
Yeah, we've got to be very careful. And in fact, the right to protest, as long as it's done within the law, is very important, I think. And even...
It's one of those freedoms that we, or past generations, fought for.
So it's that whole thing, isn't it? Whereas, you know, I might disagree with someone, but I will fight for them to be allowed to have their say and to protest. There's loads of protest goes on that I don't agree with, but as long as it's done legally, you've got to let them do it.
Yeah.
Have your voice heard. But anyway, your thoughts, keep them coming through. GBviews at gbnews.uk. We've got more to come, including the sport with Aidan in a couple of minutes.
We are GB News.
And we'd like to say thank you
To each and every one of you.
For helping our great nation
Find its voice.
We're absolutely everywhere.
across England, Scotland,
Wales and Northern Ireland.
On TV,
On radio,
And online.
we're proud to be
The People's Channel.
Britain's
News channel.
hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club. Oh my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
On the Mark Steyn Show, we cover the stories a lot of people are scared even to mention. The stuff that really matters with some of the world's biggest thinkers.
Now is his opportunity to kind of take the steering wheel of history.
Break away from the flock at 8 o'clock on GB News with the Mark Steyn Show.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
Hello, I'm Alastair Stewart, and I'd invite you to join me at noon on Saturdays and Sundays for Alastair Stewart and Friends. I've been in this business for over 40 years. Now, here at GB News, I've never been happier. I get to choose the big stories that really interest me. We hear what you have to say, and you hear what I have to say. I really hope you can join me, noon on Saturdays and Sundays.
I'm Mark Dolan. Join me at 11 on GB News for Headliners, in which I'll be joined by two of the UK's top comedians discussing tomorrow's papers. If it's an important story, we'll cover it, but we'll have some fun along the way. Headliners, the late night paper review that won't send you to sleep like the others will. 7 nights a week at 11 p.m. on GB News.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
It's 7:25. Good morning to you. You're watching and listening to Breakfast with Stephen and Anne.
And of course it is Remembrance Sunday today. Greta from Cambridge says, I'll be remembering my dad, Harry, today. He was killed serving in the Grenadier Guards in North Africa in 1943. The lorry he was travelling in hit a landmine. He was 27. I was 2 years old and I've got no memory of him, but I understand he saw me twice whilst on leave. Today I'll be travelling to lay the British Legion wreath on my home village memorial in Suffolk, which bears his name. My father is buried in the Commonwealth War Graves Commission Cemetery in Tunisia. We must never forget.
No. Susan, morning Susan, said, my darling son retired from the army after 29 years in the Paras and got a lovely send-off at Catterick on Friday. I'm remembering today the friends and colleagues he lost during his tour in Afghanistan in 2006, especially Brian Budd, who got a posthumous VC. My son was awarded the MC for his actions there, but came home unscathed, thank goodness.
Miracle. Bernard says, I served in the army from the age of 17 years and 6 months for 10 years, and then the police force until retirement age. I remember my former colleagues who I served with in Northern Ireland. They're not always mentioned. We remember them too.
Yeah.
And there are some amazing stories of heroic dogs in Northern Ireland.
Yes.
During the Troubles.
And talking of dogs and purple poppies, John says you can buy purple poppies in Tesco's via the British Legion. Oh, so there you go.
Well, Mike's watching from Bangkok, of all places.
Oh, really?
Good morning. Top of the day to you, good folks, he says. I send my regards to Stephen and Anne, and I wanted to say the purple poppies are a brilliant idea. Having worked with service dogs during my time in the Middle East, having a canine partner was a wonderful and special relationship. Well done to them.
Yeah, quite right too. Keep your thoughts coming through, if you would. gbviews@gbnews.uk. Time to talk sport now. Aidan McGee's here. Morning, Aidan. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. What about yourself?
Yeah, we're all very
good,
well.
But you've got some good stories, haven't you?
Yeah, I mean, look, it was a massive weekend of sport this weekend, this weekend anyway. And then yesterday, I think we did a broadcast without mentioning football, which is very rare for us.
Really? Oh, I don't remember that, really. Oh, it was one about rugby yesterday, isn't it?
Yes, it was, yeah. But so the Premier League, which has been suspended now because of the World Cup, it's not back until Boxing Day. It was almost like, hang on a minute, we're still here.
Yeah.
Let's wave. There were huge stories yesterday. Now, we've been speaking over the last few weeks about this gentleman, Ivan Toney at Brentford. Great start to the season, but not a great week. He was subject to... He's
under investigation, isn't he?
He is, yeah, for a breach of the gambling code with the FA, helping with their inquiries. He then, quite unexpectedly, gets left out of the England squad. Now, we don't really know yet whether the two things are linked, but nonetheless, he'd have every excuse to feel down the dumps and feel sorry for himself. But he just goes to the Etihad Stadium yesterday at Manchester City. Manchester City hadn't lost at home since February of last year when they lost to Tottenham. You've got Erling Haaland tearing up records all over the place. He's another one not going to the World Cup, by the way, because Norway didn't qualify. But he produces, Ivan Toney, a performance from the gods. I've not seen a centre-forward display like this for quite some time. Brentford hadn't won at Manchester City since 1937.
Wow!
My dad would have been 4.
That is astonishing.
And they produced this performance, and he could have had 5. He scored 2 goals, and he was absolutely outstanding. He celebrated at the end, and now it begs the question from Gareth Southgate: why didn't he pick him?
Wow.
Maybe we won't know
Don't
just
know,
yet.
do we?
You can't fit everybody in. You're damned if you do, damned if you don't. What would have happened yesterday in the week? He probably would have picked him on Thursday, and then the other guy who went in ahead of him, Callum Wilson, might have scored a hat-trick for Newcastle yesterday. So it just goes like that.
I mean, it might have been the not being picked, the disappointment that fired him up.
Without doubt. I mean, I think he would feel angry. I mean, he was in the last squad. As I say, we don't know if it's... Well, we know the FA were aware of this gambling thing, but they were picking him anyway. The FA, the England were. So maybe because it got on the media, we'll know in the fullness of time whether it's had a link. But that win at Manchester City has left Manchester City trailing Arsenal by 5 points. So Arsenal went to Wolves in the evening kick-off, knowing that unexpectedly City had lost those points, and they went and put Wolves to the sword. And they're not back on Boxing Day, so Arsenal, for the first time in a number of years, are actually top of the league at Christmas. And historically, I think in 10 of the last 13 seasons, the side that's been top of the league at Christmas has gone on to win the league. So an entertaining day yesterday. Lots of other stories yesterday. We spoke about James Maddison in the week, about whether is he going to be included with the England squad, you know, because he's been in great form. Gareth Southgate didn't particularly fancy him. And then he goes to West Ham yesterday, scores the first goal in a 2-0 win for Leicester. That's another interesting thing. How many times did we speak about a month ago about Brendan Rodgers getting a sack? They're now up into mid-table. They've won 6 of the last 8 games. This just shows if you stick together and don't panic. Anyway, I'm digressing, as I usually do, but James Maddison gets a knock in the first half on his knee. I'm quite excited about this, aren't I? He gets a knock on his knee, and then he has to tweet afterwards saying that... I mean, he was taken off by the team, by the manager, as a precaution. But he tweeted afterwards saying he's absolutely fine and he's going to link up with the squad tomorrow. But what a nightmare for the manager, having to wait for all these games to take place, hoping that they're all going to be fit to board the plane on Monday.
Yeah. Yes, actually, it must be on tenterhooks.
It is. And we had some great stories as well. I mean, Leeds led 3 times, I think it was, at Tottenham and lost 4-3. Liverpool winning 3-1. Everton, a bit of an unsavoury incident at the end. Their fans get into an argument with the players because they lost 3-0 at Bournemouth, so all's not well there. Some of these clubs, including my club, QPR, yesterday lost 2-0. We were grateful for the break because it's a time to recalibrate, get on the training pitch, work on what's good and what's bad, and you might see a different team come Boxing Day.
Yeah. I always forget they have to play on Boxing Day, don't they? I just think that's.
Well, what day to come back?
It's the big sports day.
It's rotten, that, isn't it? You can't have much
play in the
'60s.
In the '60s, they played on Christmas Day.
Did they?
Yeah. I remember Jose Mourinho came to England 18 years ago, and when one of his earlier press conferences, he was saying, "I can't believe you're playing Boxing Day. What's the matter with you people?" And then one of the older journalists put up and said, "Well, in the '60s we played on Christmas Day." He nearly fell off his chair.
Yeah.
Of course, very famously, since we're remembering on Remembrance Sunday, there was a lot of football played on Christmas Day in the trenches.
That's right. The game of peace.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Just a quick mention on the cricket as well. England versus Pakistan T20 final in Melbourne. It's due to take place 8 o'clock this morning.
Our time.
Yes, our time. It's just that it's been given an extra day to run into tomorrow if necessary because the weather is expected to be very inclement indeed. We may even see a delay to the start this morning. But England are looking to retain their title under Jos Buttler. They beat India the other day, and they're in decent form going into that match. So in front of 90,000 people. So if it is going to rain, there's a lot of people getting wet.
Yeah.
Well, indeed. Lovely, Aidan. Thank you. We'll catch up with you a little bit later on.
Just very quickly on the purple poppies, Kathy from Sevenoaks, hi Kathy, says you can also buy a purple poppy at your local veterinary surgery or a good pet store. So I suppose anywhere that's particularly well known for animals, you might stand a very good chance of coming across a purple poppy.
Yes.
There's lots of support for Matt Hancock as well, from people watching this
Is
morning.
there?
Barbara says, I, for one, think Matt has been amazing in Celebrity Get Me Out of Here. He has been so honest, taken all the trials with amazing good humour. It's on the other side.
Oh, is it? Oh.
No, it's on the other side of that one. Yeah, whatever. That one. We get these delivered in old-fashioned paper.
Oh, here we go.
It's
on the reverse.
And
Oh,
Karen
great.
says, I've only ever watched this year because Matt Hancock is in it. And because everyone and their granny are judging Matt, it has made me like him more. I hope he wins. He's got more courage in his little finger than so many of the detractors have in their whole bodies.
Oh, well, there you go.
There you go.
Well, actually, I mean, he is getting on with it, isn't he? By all
He's
accounts.
doing all these trials and he's actually succeeding. Can I do one more
Go on, then.
GB view about remembrance?
Yes.
Alan says, today I'm going to be remembering my granddad, who served in the First World War, being awarded the Military Medal and the Meritorious Service Medal, and his brother, my uncle, who served in the Navy. I'll be remembering my late dad, who served in Burma and Korea, who was wounded by mortar fire in Korea. My 2 brothers and myself also served. This is a very military family. In the same regiment, one of us being injured in Ireland. Today is an incredibly special day.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, you do get these military families, don't you, like that? Look, keep your thoughts coming through and who you're remembering today. GBviews at gbnews.uk. And coming up, we're going to take you through the Sunday newspapers.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
My name is Andrew Doyle, Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
My name's Tom Harwood, and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Every Friday and Sunday night from 9, it's Mark Dolan Tonight.
We're on the same page again. There's something weird happening.
Let Ian finish. Don't be such a cranky.
That mini budget was the tip of the iceberg.
And on Saturday, my show just got bigger. From 8, it's Mark Dolan's Saturday Night In.
You can't govern a country if you can't speak. Stop talking.
My God, we reached the end. I've never been early in my life. Only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Arlene Foster, for The Briefing on GB News. Every Friday at 3 p.m, I'll give you all the latest political news and analysis, and we'll have robust live debate. To make sure that you're caught up on all of the biggest issues of the day, we'll bring on experts in their field. I'll ask the questions that you'd like to ask. We're not afraid to tackle discussions from all perspectives, including yours. Don't forget, The Briefing with me, Arlene Foster, every Friday at 3 p.m. on GB News.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing! You see, amazing!
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
You need. Good morning to you. It's 7:38. You're watching and listening to Breakfast with Stephen and Anne.
Yeah. Time to go through the papers now. And joining us this morning, broadcaster Claire Muldoon and former head of counter-terrorism at the MOD, Major General Chip Chapman, isn't it? Major General. Right. What are we starting with? Well, we're starting with the Sunday Times and Putin.
Yeah, so the headline in the Sunday Times is Putin's retreat transforms person into a city of joy. And of course, this is the actually withdrawal rather than retreat in military terms from the right bank of the Dnipro River to the left bank. Now, actually, from a military perspective, this makes sense from a Russian perspective, and you have to ask yourself why. And that is, why were they in Kherson City? And the reason that they were there was to try and go to Odessa and then on to Moldova to link up with the Transnistria, which is a Russian-speaking area there. And it's this notion of the wider, greater Russia and raising up and gathering in Russian-speaking people. If you couldn't achieve that, it's pointless being on the right bank of the Dnipro.
I mean, that Transnistria it's an exclave, isn't it?
Yeah.
So it's Russian, but
Yeah.
it's like outside of Russia.
It is. But the key thing here is what this really shows at the political level is the broken strategy bridge from a Russian perspective between political intent and military power, because it was only on the 30th September that Putin, illegally annexed Kherson as a province and said he would use all available means to protect what he then saw as Russian territory.
Yeah, because that's one of the places he held a referendum, isn't it?
Yeah, and actually the joy
So-called
in
referendum.
Kherson shows you that the referendum was an absolute joke, as we always knew it would be. So, and it's not a surprise that the pictures you saw a couple of days ago of Surovikin, the Russian general, and the Russian defense minister, that was deliberate, because Putin is really pointing the finger at the military, saying, you're to blame for this, not me. It's sort of get out.
Is anyone buying that? I mean, was it Robert Fox yesterday saying the reason Putin isn't going to the G20 isn't because, you know, he's too frightened to go, whatever, because of the other leaders, but because he's too frightened to leave Moscow because of what might happen while he's not there.
Well, there's been no real military coup in Russia since 1945. The nearest you got to it was the sort of Yeltsin thing in '93, but that's really a clash between two different parties. So it's easy to see why you might get rid of Putin, you know, battlefield reverses, the economic situation. The how is a lot more difficult. The army has no say in internal security. He has a very strong protective basket around him with a thing called the FSO, the Federal Protection Agency, and getting to him is very, very difficult.
Do you think there's an increase in disconnect now between the military and those that run the Russian military and indeed Putin himself?
There is in terms of that strategy bridge, and one of the ways that I see this ending is Ukraine has already defeated the professional army of Russia.
Yes.
They've been fought to a standstill. They're now really taking on the amateur army, the mobilised army. And there is a history of armies breaking and just not fighting anymore. And there could come a point when that occurs. Can't determine the time, but an amateur army which is demoralised, doesn't have kit, particularly with the winter coming along, is an army which is increasingly fragile. That fragile army is the Russian army. It is not the Ukrainian army.
Oh, it's interesting.
That picture on the front of the Sunday Times as well shows these two Ukrainian girls there with draped in flags. They've even got their nails painted in the national colours. And they're obviously very joyous at what has happened. Though I gather there were collaborators whilst it was occupied by the Russians. And do you think it will be a very awkward time now, retaking, well, they've already retaken it, but reoccupying the city? Because there will be people who did collaborate with the Russians, women who did collaborate with them as well. I mean, these things are ghastly when an invading force retreats and leaves behind a mess.
All of that is absolutely true and is one of the reasons that Kherson fell so quickly, because there were collaborators. In the wider strategy of this, it's a great point, Anne, because there's a difference between conflict termination, how wars end, and conflict resolution. And that is the wider problem here in the longer term, because three things always pertain. Leaders might change. Putin will go at some stage. Vital interests rarely change, and geography never changes, and there'll always be a border somewhere between Ukraine and Russia. And so trying to square that for the future when Russia still has maximalist intentions, that is, it doesn't see Ukraine as a sovereign entity. So until you can upset that conundrum, and the best way to do that at the moment is Ukrainian victory and diplomacy following after that. What we've got to be very wary of is a Ukraine fatigue from a Western perspective.
Yeah.
Now, I'm absolutely looking at this as an ethical, moral and justice point of view.
Do you think there is already Ukraine fatigue in the media as well?
There has been some Ukraine fatigue. One of the great things from a Ukraine perspective this week was actually the results of the midterm election, because they can guarantee that, at least for the next 2 years, they will have pretty clear, unequivocal support from the Americans, which may have been upset by some of the more fringe elements of both parties, Democrats and Republicans, if the midterm elections had been slightly different.
Interesting. Let's look at tiger mums in the Sunday Times, Claire. It's a phrase that fills me with dread.
Does it?
Tiger mums.
Does it really?
Pushing
Why?
mothers.
I think you've got two really good mothers
You're
here.
not a tiger mum.
I'm a tiger, I am, yeah. And I don't believe the tiger mum is necessarily pushy, although you do have to push a bit.
You do, but you need to equip your children, I think, to be, with discipline, with morals, with a code, with, plus the ability to work on their own, and I think that's what tiger mums are. I am one. I mean, my kids, I've got 4 of them, and they would say the same. Nicola Benedetti is quoted in this article, which I'll bring out in a wee bit more detail later. But she said if it wasn't for her parents saying, you cannot go out to play, you cannot do X, Y and Z until you have practiced your violin, she admits she would not be half the person that she was in order to play. It's part of her identity. But this is
that not just mothering?
No, it's not, because mothering can be the path of least resistance. Mothering can be, you don't need to sit at the table for your supper. You don't need to join in the rest of the family. You can you can be with your screen always. And sometimes as well, parents don't even know where their children are when they're out. You have to, I was on mine like a tiger, really. Not a helicopter. But
helicopter mums are different. Did you have a tiger mum?
I don't think so. I just had a loving, caring mother who brought me up with the right values, and I think
the right values come.
They come
don't
with
come
it.
easy.
OK, so there's this PISA test which ranks 15-year-olds from 80 different countries in maths, science and reading. In the last PISA tables published in 2019, the UK did not make the top 10. Now, PISA is the programme for international student assessment. Countries like South Korea and Singapore are set to pull even further ahead of their peers in England. And, of course, where do all the Asian children want to come and study for tertiary education? It's the UK. So they cornerstone and build up most of the international student intake for tertiary education in this country. And, of course, the universities let them in because they pay more money than,
they're important,
than students from our own country and, indeed, the rest of Europe. So don't tame Tiger Mum. Why shouldn't we tame a Tiger Mum? Because Britons can still learn a lot from the approach. We can learn from the Tiger economies is that parents are not customers of education but active participants. And I think that's another key thing. I've got teachers in my family, quite a lot of them in education, and they say, you know, the worst parent is that parent that undermines us as the professionals. And I've never done that. There's nothing worse than when your child comes home and says, well, Miss or Mr. said this, that and the next thing, and I don't... How dare that parent, I'm sorry, how dare that parent come up to the school and say, why did you do that to my child? You should always, I think, support the teacher first and foremost, and then the child second.
I mean, certainly from the education of my kids, one of the problems for teachers is with the internet these days, parents are actually emailing so many times to the teachers on various issues. Now, of course, my kids went to a pretty nice school, but they would be asking things like, what tennis balls should I buy for my kids, you know, and stuff like that. And, of course, you have to answer all these, and it just consumes the time which teachers are not necessarily giving to their core function.
I can imagine teachers have an awful lot of emails.
They do have an awful lot. Plus, they've also got a lot of checks and balances. They cannot just be teachers now. They are social workers. They are parents. They're supposed to be there primarily to teach. And I believe they shouldn't be there to do anything else.
No, they're expected to do so much.
So much more. And everything is done on how well that class is done in terms of results. It's all about results.
We're almost out of time. So can we just have a quick look at the Sun, Chip, and rail bosses who are a pander to the Green lobby?
Yeah, this is actually, in lots of ways, a good thing. It's to do with the fact that we're going to start using bamboo to make sleepers on the railway instead of concrete.
Oh, right. Is it strong enough?
Yes, and bamboo is one of the greatest materials in the world, along with coconuts.
Scaffolding.
Really.
It's incredibly strong, bamboo. Yeah.
Now, what attracted me to this story really is, on a personal level, I absolutely hate bamboo. You know,
in the garden.
Someone had it on the garden fence at the back of where we live.
Oh, you can't get rid
I know
of it.
too much about rhizomes to sort of comment sagely on anything about bamboo, but it is very quick growing, and therefore it's very environmental and a good sort of material to use for all sorts of things. And people need to buy more bamboo socks as well.
I am wearing bamboo socks as we speak.
Yeah, it's remarkable, isn't it? You can make socks out of bamboo. But I flew back from holiday the other day, and the cutlery that was served on board was made from bamboo. Isn't that fascinating?
It is.
Why don't we all have bamboo cutlery now?
Do you need a special place to grow it in terms of climate?
Bamboo, you can grow that stuff anywhere.
Yeah.
Really?
You can probably grow it in the Antarctic in the future.
Is it different from Japanese knotweed then? Because that you can't get rid of that at all.
Oh, I don't know.
They're both very invasive.
They are.
Invasive, that's
Yeah.
what I want
They're
to
very
say.
efficient, but yes, you can plant it anywhere in Britain as a fence and it'll grow like crazy.
Wow.
It's funny because it's soft and strong and very, very long.
Oh, what else is?
So I wonder what else we'll be using it for. Who knows?
True.
Look, Claire, Chip, thank you both very much indeed. We'll see you a little bit later on.
Now, of course, it is Remembrance Sunday, isn't it? And it's just coming up to 10 to 8. The King is going to lead the nation in remembrance for the first time as monarch by laying a new wreath at the cenotaph later on.
Well, nearly 10,000 people will take part in the Royal British Legion's March Past, paying tribute to the fallen, but also this year, of course, paying tribute to Her late Majesty the Queen.
Well, our royal reporter, Cameron Walker, is down there, I think, in Horse Guards Parade for us. Hello there, Cameron.
Hello, Anne. Yes, of course, Remembrance Sunday is what the late Queen regarded as one of the most important events in the royal calendar, and this year very much is going to be paying tribute to the Queen's memory. Of course, she was patron of the Royal British Legion for over 70 years. She was also the longest-serving Commander-in-Chief of the British Armed Forces. Now, the Queen laid a wreath at the cenotaph every year of her reign up until 2017, when it was decided that the then Prince of Wales, Charles, would lay a wreath on her behalf, and she actually watched the events unfold from the balcony of the Foreign Office. But last year, her final year, missed it due to a back sprain, and the then Prince of Wales, Charles, laid a wreath again on her behalf. And now, of course, he is king, and he is going to be leading the nation in remembrance for the first time as our sovereign. Now, the Royal British Legion organises the events here for the march past at the Cenotaph in central London for the British and Commonwealth former military and civilian personnel to honour those fallen who gave their lives for our freedom here in this country. 9,800 people are expected to take part from 300 separate organisations. Now, the Royal British Legion is the UK's largest charity dedicated to supporting the needs of the army communities here in this country. It's well known, of course, for its annual poppy appeal. I'm wearing one at the moment, as are so many other people here in central London this morning. And at 11 a.m, the nation will fall silent for a 2-minute silence to remember those who gave their lives for our freedom. Now, following the 2-minute silence at 11 a.m, His Majesty the King will lay a new wreath at the cenotaph, which will have ribbons attached with his racing colours. Is also expected to pay tributes to his mother, the Queen, and his grandfather, King George VI. The Queen Consort, Camilla, a wreath is going to be laid by her equerry for the first time on her behalf. It's the first time a wreath has been placed at the cenotaph on Camilla's behalf, at least. And as for the Prince of Wales, he will be placing the Prince of Wales's wreath with those feathers at the cenotaph for the first time, Prince William, but is also going to be containing Welsh red, a ribbon of Welsh red for the first time. This is perhaps a nod to the Prince of Wales, Prince William's ongoing commitments to the people of Wales as he gets into his new role. A number of other members of the royal family are expected to be here later on this morning. The Princess of Wales and a number of others are going to be observing events from the Foreign Office balcony, including the Queen Consort and the Countess of Wessex as well. The Earl of Wessex is expected to be here too. But I think all of this is going to be perhaps a tribute and remembering Her Majesty the Queen, particularly for the royal family members here today and the close to 10,000 veterans and military personnel who will be marching down the Mall, not down the Mall, at Whitehall at the cenotaph this morning.
It's in Cameron, isn't it? Because in some ways things don't change. It's all about continuity, and yet in other respects it does feel like we've turned a page, and this is the beginning of a new chapter.
It's all about tradition, isn't it, Stephen? I think when this kind of march past first started, it was very much following the service personnel of the First and Second World Wars who laid down their lives for our freedom. But it's now very much about thinking about the conflicts since in Afghanistan, the Falklands, of course, the 40th anniversary this year. And I think also the ongoing war in Ukraine is very much a theme in the back of people's minds here. As Prince of Wales, Charles, very much voiced his support for the people of Ukraine. He called out Russia's aggression, and that was a quote that he said when he visited the Ukrainian Orthodox Cathedral. And now, of course, he is Commander-in-Chief of the armed forces. And I think people throughout the United Kingdom are very much looking to the monarchy for stability at times such as this.
OK, Cameron, thanks very much.
And that Place Horse Guards Parade is going to fill up over the coming hours now, isn't it? Because that's where everybody gathers. And you can see all the organisation going into that as we speak. Everybody gathers, and then they will march down the...
Whitehall.
Thank you, Whitehall, yeah, past the cenotaph. And that will be brilliant to watch, it really will.
We'll have full coverage, of course, here on GB News. Back with all the headlines in a moment. First, here's your weather. Let's look ahead to the weather. In the UK, it's going to be generally dry, cloudy in the east, rain moving in for the west. So these are the details for you.
A dry but cloudy day for southwest England, with some low cloud lingering across high ground. Breezy in the west, particularly at the coasts, highs of 15.
Dry across the southeast with sunny spells, although cloudier in the north and west. Light winds and feeling mild, about 16 degrees.
And then dry throughout Wales on Sunday today, with sunny intervals and cloud mostly confined to the east, breezy at western coasts and highs of 16.
Now, a cloudier day across the Midlands, although some sunnier spells at times, mainly in the south and west. Light winds and feeling pretty warm in any sunshine. Again, those temperatures pretty good, about 15 degrees.
A grey day, though, in the northeast, with some low cloud lingering into the afternoon. Perhaps some brighter spells in the west at times. Breezy across any high ground, highs of 13.
A fine day across southern Scotland, plenty of prolonged sunny spells. Scattered showers and cloud at times. Breezy in the west, about 14 or 15 degrees.
And then in Northern Ireland, dry mostly, with some brighter spells, but rain approaching from the west later. Breezy again, particularly at the coasts, and a maximum temperature of 15.
So a band of heavy rain and strong winds moving in from the west, staying mostly dry elsewhere. And that's your weather today.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week. I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. There's never been a more interesting but also critical time in British politics, and I can't wait to bring you the biggest stories of the day with the best factual accuracy and also a few of my own opinions thrown in. We'll engage in passionate but always polite debate with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Monday to Thursday, 10 till 12 on TV, on radio and online.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Deebs & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
On the Mark Stein Show, we cover the stories a lot of people are scared even to mention. The stuff that really matters with some of the world's biggest thinkers.
Now is his opportunity to kind of take the steering wheel of history.
Break away from the flop at 8 o'clock on GB News with the Mark Stein Show.
We are GB News.
And we'd like to say thank you
To each and every one of you
For helping our great nation
find its voice.
We're absolutely everywhere.
across England, Scotland,
Wales and Northern Ireland.
On TV,
on radio,
And online.
we're proud to be
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
King Charles will lead the Remembrance Day service for the first time as monarch today, following in his mother's footsteps.
Good morning. It's 8 o'clock on Sunday, the 13th of November. This is Breakfast on GB News with Stephen and Anne.
We're live across the whole of the UK. We're on your TV, your radio and online. So wherever you are, whatever you're doing today, you can take us with you. These are your top stories.
Well, the nation will fall silent today as the King, for the first time as monarch, leads a moving Remembrance Day service. King Charles III will lay a new poppy wreath incorporating his colours, with the design paying tribute to his mother and grandfather, George VI.
Well, stay with us as we remember those who can't be with us today and reflect on the sacrifices made by our veterans and service personnel.
And Prime Minister Rishi Sunak vows to call out Putin's regime at the G20 meeting and says the summit will not be business as usual.
Emails coming in thick and fast this morning. So many of you with your memories of relatives, friends on this Remembrance Sunday. So we'll go through all of those a little bit later on. If you want to join in, please do. GB Views at gbnews.uk.
And we were talking earlier about the purple poppies, which are sold to help the charities that look after animals who have served and sometimes retire and have to be found new homes and things like that. But there are also animals who have served heroically, actually, if that's the fitting word, in wars and lost their own lives too. And Christine has emailed in. She said, little is known about the hundreds of cats that were shipped to the trenches in World War I to cut down on the number of rats. This is a fact, and it should be remembered.
Yeah, and of course, don't forget ships' cats.
Oh, yes?
Ships always had cats. In fact, and I can't remember the name, there was one cat who survived several attacks on their ship and was awarded the Dickin Medal.
There are some wonderful stories of the Dickin medalists.
So I do apologise. Maybe ripping the set apart.
Falling off his trolley.
One of our viewers, Ali, morning Ali, sent in this picture of her puppies wearing red and purple poppies. There you go. Yeah, I don't know what the dogs are, but beautiful.
They are lovely. And it's nice if you're taking the dog out for a walk today, or you're taking the dog along, you know, to your local village memorial or something. It's nice for them to do their bit, and they can wear a poppy on their collar or whatever, couldn't they?
Yeah.
I might take Ali out for a walk later, maybe get her a purple poppy if I can.
Yes, get one on the way home. Good idea. Well, look, because it is Remembrance Sunday, and it's such an important day, I think, and you do get a sense the country comes together. But this year, of course, for the first time, the King will lead the nation in remembrance, laying a new wreath that's been designed for him at the Cenotaph.
And, of course, nearly 10,000 people are going to take part in the Royal British Legion's march past, paying tribute to all of those who've fallen, all of them that they remember, and also, of course, Her late Majesty, the Queen.
Well, let's talk to our Northern Ireland reporter, Doogie Beattie, who joins us now. Morning to you, Doogie. What's going to be happening in Northern Ireland today?
Well, it is Remembrance Sunday. We are at the Cenotaph in Belfast. There will be quite a lot of activities going on here today, starting off with the Royal Irish Band coming in, and then we presume the Secretary of State will be with us. But Remembrance Day here means a lot to the people of Northern Ireland. They have an unusually large amount of people that serve in the armed forces, and with me now is one of them that did exactly that, former platoon sergeant in the British paratroopers, and he served in the Falklands in 1982, and he's going to tell us a bit about it now. Tell us, what was it like?
Well, I fought as a platoon sergeant on the Battle of Mount Longdon, Three Perils Battle of Mount Longdon, and it was horrific. It was horrific. We talk today about the glorious dead, but there's no glory in dying in war. It is brutal, it is hard, and it was hard fought. Our 2nd Battalion had already fought at Goose Green, where they lost 18 men. Mount Longdon subsequently became the bloodiest land battle of the Falklands, where we lost 23 men.
I mean, do you think about it? Do you dwell on it? And who do you fight for?
I think about it every day. Our thoughts aren't confined to one day or 1 week of the year. We remember the guys that we fought alongside. And during the battle, you're fighting for your friends. You're fighting for your comrades that are either side of you. And for Queen and Country means a lot to me, but during the battle, you're not thinking about Queen and Country, you're thinking about your comrades that are fighting either side of you.
in Northern Ireland, there's a lot of talk around legacy issues at the moment. Do you, as a former veteran, think that you have been looked after by the government?
No, I don't. I do not. We welcome, of course we welcome any legislation that will halt the pernicious prosecutions against veterans. We welcome that. But the legacy proposals are, as a Belfast Agreement were, they're all embracing, they're going to deny justice to the true victims, and they're granting equivalence, no matter what way people talk about it, they're granting equivalence to terrorists. And the soldiers that are currently trapped in the judicial process have no protection guaranteed through that, and that includes soldiers who are currently under investigation, whose files are sitting with the PPS. There is no clarity on whether they will be protected by this proposed legislation.
Finally, today at 11 o'clock, will you feel any different, and where will your thoughts be?
My thoughts today will be with the many friends that I lost, both here in Northern Ireland and during the Falklands War.
So everything happens here at 11 o'clock as it does around the rest of the UK, and we will be back to you then.
Doogie, thank you. So many emails coming through. And this one just sparked our attention, didn't it? From Frankie. Morning, Frankie. 5 years ago was the centenary of Passchendaele, and I bought a special commemorative box from the Royal British Legion, Everyone Remembered. My box was beautiful, came with a small jewel case with a tiny poppy badge dedicated to Edward Chadwick, who died on the 4th of October 1917 at the age of 24, the age of my son now. I looked him up online, found a small photo which I printed and keep in the box. He was only a child.
Yeah.
His parents survived him, but after their death, I can't find any other relatives. So every year I put a memorial out for Edward. Even though I had no bloodline to him, I think about him often and his sacrifice. I keep his memory alive. Thank you, Edward Chadwick, for fighting for my freedom.
That's really beautiful. And it's lovely to be able to remember somebody like that, who isn't being remembered probably elsewhere. Yeah, but at only 24 to have died in that terrible, terrible war. Well done that you're remembering him. I mean, there are wonderful ways that we can all do that. I often do it by honestly just watching the march past, which I find incredibly moving. John has emailed in, says, Anne's comments about her father's wartime work on radar, along with a desire to fly, reminds me of my late father, Ray Edwards, who had a similar experience. My late father was in the Royal Navy and he served as an electrician. He volunteered for the Fleet Air Arm. He passed selection with flying colours and was given a second service number peculiar to the Air Arm. Come the time to move on to practical flying, it was found that because of his short stature, his feet couldn't reach the pedals. So back to the fleet he went. One notable effort, though, he was involved in was the first ship getting fitted with radar and subsequent sea trials. He said that the ship was overrun with boffins who oversaw the trials. My dad might well have been one of those boffins.
He might well have been.
Yeah, because that's what they did.
Might well have been.
They took all this amazing radar equipment into the ships, into the submarines, everything like that. Yeah.
Phenomenal. Well, keep your thoughts coming
Great
through.
stories to be told. If you've got a story to tell us about who you're remembering, maybe, then do email in gbviews@gbnews.uk.
It is 8 minutes past 8. Let's bring you up to date with some of the other headlines. And the Prime Minister has been urged to crack down on UK-based firms stashing profits in tax havens. Now, Labour says the move would raise £7 billion a year, wanting firms with global revenues paying 15% on any profits they make in other places. Now, the government published draft legislation in July, but because of all the hoo-ha through the summer, the proposals are yet to be laid in Parliament.
The Health Secretary says pay demands from unions representing nurses are neither reasonable nor affordable. And that comes as almost 10,000 of NHS members are included in the vote on strike action in the coming days. Steve Barclay has said that he's resistant to negotiating on pay, with the union demanding an increase of at least 15%.
Ofgem's failure to effectively regulate energy suppliers has left households footing a £2.7 billion bill. Now, the Public Accounts Committee found that despite financial instability amongst energy retailers back in 2018, Ofgem didn't tighten requirements for existing suppliers until last year. The committee said Ofgem did not strike the right balance between promoting energy competition and ensuring financial resilience.
And the immigration minister has insisted that to reduce the number of asylum seekers coming to the UK, so-called Hotel Britain, must end. Robert Jenrick says it's necessary to move towards more basic accommodation, as opposed to what he's described as luxury rooms. He claimed the UK's generosity towards refugees is being abused by people skipping the queue via small boats across the Channel.
Now, if you fancy a lovely holiday, have you thought about going to Bali? It always sounds very nice. I've never been, but it always sounds lovely, doesn't it? Anyway, the Prime Minister's going there today. Not for a holiday, though, so we're told, but for the G20 summit, where he's going to talk about efforts to tackle the global financial crisis, and we are told that he will specifically call out Vladimir Putin over Russia's invasion of Ukraine.
Yeah, because President Putin is actually going to skip the event. Instead, he's sending Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov instead.
Well, meanwhile, back home, Tory MPs have come out in defence of the Deputy Prime Minister, Dominic Raab, after he was accused of aggressive behaviour towards civil servants in the Department of Justice.
Well, let's talk about all this with Deputy Digital Political Editor for the Daily Express, Dan Falvey. Very good morning to you. It's very, very busy times for Rishi Sunak at the moment, but G20 looks as though, I mean, maybe there could be some sort of breakthrough or a warming of relations in some way.
I think when it comes to G20, we're going to find that there's a fair amount of unity on all countries minus Russia. That no country on the whole is really supporting Russia when it comes to this war. There have been those that have been slightly less willing to call Russia out, such as India or China, but they're not exactly supporting Vladimir Putin. And I think what we'll find is when you get all those leaders around the table together, there's a fair amount of unity that actually this war in Ukraine is having global consequences and needs to come to an end. And I think Sergei Lavrov's going to find it a very uncomfortable few days.
Well, he is, but it's all about that backstage diplomacy, isn't it? Backdoor diplomacy. I mean, at least that it does provide the possibility for something to happen. I mean, probably not anything that we'd hear about anytime soon, but it's perhaps an opportunity.
Yeah, and President Joe Biden has spoken about the fact that he thinks that Ukraine need to seize this as an opportunity for peace talks. He thinks that everyone around the table together, there's maybe an opportunity that maybe some sort of deal could be done to help bring an end to this, to resolve the war in Ukraine. With Russia on the back foot, with it being forced to pull out of more and more areas, maybe that Russia might be slightly more willing to talk about its options because, quite frankly, they're not in control of this situation anymore. So maybe there is some backroom deals to be done.
Why do you think President Putin is not going?
I think President Putin knows that if he was to turn up, that it would be incredibly uncomfortable. No world leader wants to go to one of these events and find themselves being the one that no one wants to speak to. We saw a few years ago when it was Brexit negotiations, when Theresa May went to the EU and she was awkwardly caught on camera, standing around on her own, trying to find someone to talk to, and just no one came over to speak to her. That's the sort of situation that Vladimir Putin will want to avoid. He won't want to look isolated on the world stage, and by going, that's the danger he has. So I think he's very much hoping that by staying at home, he can kind of just shrug things off as politics as normal, nothing to see here, and play to his audience at home.
Talking of politics as normal, what are we to make of the fact that people are now coming out in support of Dominic Raab? He's the latest person to be sort of brought up in these bullying claims. Gavin Williamson didn't really have many people coming out in support for him. Different story for Dominic Raab. What does that tell us?
Well, I think Dominic Raab has unfortunately had to battle with some allegations such as this for a number of years now. There have been repeated stories about him maybe having a temper behind closed doors, and I remember these stories going back to 2017, 2018. The fact that all these Tory MPs are coming out supporting him, I think, shows that actually they see him as a real team player. Whereas Gavin Williamson was seen as a bully who kind of stuck up for himself and was willing to do what he needed to do to promote his own career. I think the fact that you're seeing so many Tory MPs come out in support of Dominic Raab is kind of proof that they see him as one of the good guys. And let's not forget, Dominic Raab's had a difficult job in recent years. Dominic Raab was the one who stepped in and was acting Prime Minister when Boris Johnson was suffering with COVID. Dominic Raab has done a great deal of service to the Tory party and to the government over the years.
first sort of came into any of the top jobs, a lot of people were saying, who the heck is he? Hadn't really heard of him, hadn't made his mark. But now he is very much part of the establishment inside Number 10. He's in there seeing prime ministers come and go, isn't he?
Yeah, I mean, his first kind of major job was when he became Brexit Secretary for what felt like all of 5 minutes. He was in, and then just a couple of months later, he resigned in protest to Theresa May's deal. And now they can't seem to, he seems to be stuck there. Even when Boris Johnson wanted to get rid of him and wanted to remove him as Foreign Secretary, he ended up having to give him the title of Deputy Prime Minister. So I think you see that actually he equally has his own power behind closed doors, and he knows that he can garner respect, and that actually prime ministers need him on the backbenches. He'd be a waste, and actually could also be a bit of a threat, and that they want him close by and keep an eye on him.
OK, Dan, good to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed.
We were asking why Bali earlier. A lot of people have been reminding us that Indonesia is currently chair of the G20, and the greatest concentration of hotels in Indonesia is in Bali. That's from Ian. Thanks very much, Ian.
Makes sense then. Philip says, morning to you. COVID aside, we've been visiting Bali nearly every year, sometimes twice.
Lovely.
And then telling us that
the presidency of G20 is currently Indonesia. It
always looks idyllic, doesn't it? I did listen to the audiobook of Eat, Pray, Love several years ago. I think it was all right.
Yeah.
But a lot of that sort of set in Bali and things, and it sounded lovely.
Oh, I'm sure it is. Absolutely.
Very nice. Quite fancied a bit of Bali.
Oh, by the way, bamboo. We were talking about the amazingness of bamboo and the fact that it is being used more and more in construction now, and in clothing. He's wearing bamboo socks. Apparently, soft, strong and very, very long. Yes, believe it or not, says David, you can buy bamboo loo roll. And it's very good. It's actually made by a company called Panda.
Yes. Oh, and there's there's loads of companies doing it.
And is it? I presume it's more ecologically friendly.
Well, it will be. It will be just because bamboo grows so quickly. Just looking at it now, shop for bamboo toilet roll. What do you normally buy them in? I normally buy sort of like 12. So it's £25. This one for
24.
For 24.
So it's roughly £1 a roll.
£1 a roll, which is expensive.
It is expensive. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it has to be a way forward, doesn't it? A very good way forward.
Well, the more people buy it, the cheaper it gets. That's how these things work, isn't it? Lindsay's intriguing us this morning. Lindsay, good morning to you. They say it's nice to see more of your studio. I'm not sure how much more you're seeing, Lindsay. Have we got... Oh, there's one.
We've just done a very wide shot.
Have we got camera 2? Is camera 2 available on a big shot? Let's have a look. But there you go.
We weren't aware that we...
Oh, there you go.
There's
camera 2. So it looks very posh. Well, I don't know about that.
No, it's not posh.
It's all right, but I quite like it. It's quite cosy when the heating's on.
Made of Lego, I think.
Well, they're all made of Lego.
Well, true.
True. So there you go. There you go. It's nice to get. I quite like giving you a little tour.
It is.
Show us the sofas.
I just wish it wasn't so dark.
What?
I think lots of areas of the studio are too dark.
There's the
particularly in the morning, you need to see something a bit more.
If you're on the radio and you want to see a tour of the studio, you'll have to get online and have a look on YouTube or whatever and rewind it to this point. But there you go. But it's I quite like it, and I quite like all the sort of strip lighting and things, which changes colour. I like it because it changes colour.
Sue says, sorry, I didn't get the name of your military newspaper reviewer. What a joy. Someone who actually understands how the world works. More from him, please. Major General Chip Chapman.
Not a name you can easily forget.
Chip Chapman, absolutely. Former head of counter-terrorism at the MOD, which is why he really does know what he's
knows his stuff.
Yes,
he knows his stuff, yeah.
And then Remembrance Sunday, Jason says, I'm going to be laying a wreath for the regiment I once served. Plus, I will be remembering my lost family member, Thomas Henry Sands, who was killed in Ypres in 1915. He was 28 at the time, and his body was never recovered and is still missing. Oh, that's awful. But I do remember from hearing from my grandparents, whose relatives and things served in World War One, Ypres, they called it wipers. Wipers,
didn't they?
That's right. Yeah.
The sort of the soldiers going there. Ypres was too much for them. It's called it wipers.
And my Uncle Fred served in the Merchant Navy during the war, and when he came home, he brought with him a parrot that had come from the ship's parrot, basically.
Oh, right.
But it was so rude because it had learned such dreadful language you can imagine as a ship's parrot during the war, that my aunt said they could just about put up with his language during the day, but whenever the vicar came round for a cup of tea, they had to put a great big blanket over the cage to shut him up.
Oh, love it.
It was a very rude parrot.
You see, that I love. You can only imagine what came off a ship.
Yeah.
Dear me, dear me. Well, look, don't go anywhere. Keep your thoughts coming through. gbviews@gbnews.uk. We're back with Stephanie and all the showbiz in a couple of minutes, and we'll leave you with a very big wide shot. There you go. We are GB News.
And we'd like to say thank you
To each and every one of you.
for helping our great nation.
Find its voice.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Across England, Scotland,
Wales and Northern Ireland.
On TV.
On radio.
And online.
we're proud to be
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club. Oh my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
On the Mark Steyn Show, we cover the stories a lot of people are scared even to mention. The stuff that really matters with some of the world's biggest thinkers.
Now is his opportunity to kind of take the steering wheel of history.
Break away from the flock at 8 o'clock on GB News with the Mark Steyn Show.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
Hello, I'm Alastair Stewart, and I'd invite you to join me at noon on Saturdays and Sundays for Alastair Stewart and Friends. I've been in this business for over 40 years. Now, here at GB News, I've never been happier. I get to choose the big stories that really interest me. We hear what you have to say, and you hear what I have to say. I really hope you can join me, noon on Saturdays and Sundays.
I'm Mark Dolan. Join me at 11 on GB News for Headliners, in which I'll be joined by two of the UK's top comedians discussing tomorrow's papers. If it's an important story, we'll cover it, but we'll have some fun along the way. Headliners, the late night paper review that won't send you to sleep like the others will. 7 nights a week at 11 p.m. on GB News.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
(8:24). Just very briefly, I'm less jealous of the Prime Minister now.
Oh.
Who's off to Bali today. John says, I'm watching GB News in Indonesia. And we're currently in the wet season, so heavy rain and thunder yesterday afternoon and evening, and the thunder has just started again.
Woo.
Oh, well, John, that's cheered me up, but for all the sort of wrong reasons. But there you go. Thank you for watching all the way out there.
And Pam says, could you please give a shout-out to London taxis today? Because they ferry the veterans to and from the cenotaph free of charge, purely out of respect, as my other half, Bob Fitzgerald, is one of them.
Yes.
So shout-out to London taxis.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Anyway, look, time for the great world of showbiz, and that means Stephanie Tetchy. Good morning.
Good morning, Stephen and Anne.
It's very nice to see you. Let's
you.
kick off with, we're talking about the Prince of Wales. No, King Charles.
Yes.
Oh, being very generous earlier on to some of his staff. Must get that's right.
Yeah.
Kate Winslet has been generous
Yeah,
too.
we know this cost of living crisis has affected different people in different ways, but some people have been suffering more than others. And this is true of Caroline Hunter in Tillicoultry in Scotland. She was told... Oh, did I say it?
No, I'm just looking at you impressed that you got Tillicoultry.
I know, I've been practising it. Tillicoultry in Scotland. I hope I've said it right, Scots, who are watching. Yes, so Caroline Hunter, she was told that her energy bills were going to go from £6,500 to £17,000 a year. And that's a bit of a struggle, but her daughter is only 12 years old, her daughter Freya, and has cerebral palsy. So she has an oxygen machine which she relies on to help her breathe with all the chronic breathing problems which are associated with it. So the family have set up a GoFundMe page because, and it's not like Caroline's been sponging off the state. She works full-time, doesn't get paid that well, but she doesn't get as much benefits as a family who would not be working
And obviously
with such a child with
equipment uses up a heck of a lot of electricity.
It does.
Yeah.
So Kate Winslet was watching her story and decided to donate £17,000. So for the next year, Caroline and Freya will be able to be fine, but I don't know what happens after that. But she said she was in so much tears when Kate approached her and said that she wishes her and her family the best.
Oh, well, that's
well done.
lovely, actually.
Yeah.
Well done, Kate Winslet.
Well done
Nice.
on that. Often we don't find... Celebrities, you know, they get a lot of stick, and understandably so.
Yeah.
But a lot of them actually do a lot of stuff like this on the QT, don't they?
Yeah, they do. They tend to not want, like, too much promotion around it because they don't want to see, like, they're not being authentic as well. And I think there's always this thing of where we're always focused on celebrities and how much money they've got and all that excessiveness of wealth they've got. So it's quite nice when stuff like this happens.
Talking of celebrities or not, or royals
You could say,
or
you know,
not.
somebody I feel who's really missing from today's remembrance services is Harry, Prince Harry. I mean, he should be there, really, shouldn't he? And he's not. But last night, he and Meghan won some sort of huge award.
Well, no, it's a forthcoming award, so it pays to be a non-working royal at the moment because they are going to be honoured at the Ripple of Hope Gala, which will be taking place in New York on December 6th, where they will be receiving an award for their humanitarian works. But some of the people who go get to pay £1 million to sit on the same table as Harry and Meghan with 3 other people of their choice. So the wealthy Americans are making their bids. It's an award show which has been built by the Kennedys. So a lot of people, there's been a lot of eyebrow raising on why Harry and Meghan are actually receiving this award because, you know, in the past...
humanitarian work, they... Well,
they do.
They have done it, but I guess it feels like they're just beginning on their humanitarian journey because in the past...
I mean, Harry's done it. What's it called? Centre Barley in Africa, his charity. But I don't know what it's got to do with Meghan.
I think, to be honest...
Everything's got to do with
Meghan. And to be honest, I think these award shows just want to jump on the Harry and Meghan hype because...
But also, if they can charge £1 million for a table, then you can understand why they're just going to bring in any celebrity who can allow them to charge £1 million.
Money, and if they can have that moment with Harry and Meghan, then good for them. So that's going to be the top-tier pioneer package. But then also there's a VIP package, which is £500,000, and that's just for people to be in the same reception as Harry and Meghan.
Who are these people with us?
I know.
How much did you have to pay last night to hang about with Stephanie Beach?
Not very much, actually. I was speaking to her. She is a fabulous woman. Just hearing her story, I didn't realise she was deaf in one ear. So she's coming back. Yeah, she's coming back to Coronation Street. So I was kind of... Yes, she is. She's coming back to Coronation Street to be in a love triangle with Ken Barlow. And...
What?
Beecham.
Yes,
but they're both in their 70s, 80s or something. Oh, love can happen at any age.
She
I
seems
agree.
quite happy to be playing the other woman. But it was just amazing hearing her story. Like, she's totally deaf in her right ear. So I was like, how does it work when you're on set? And she was like, I just know my lines. I know how it works. And, you know, she's got used to it. But she's a very inspirational woman. She was telling me she doesn't do roles anymore that require her to be glamorous. She wants more hard-hitting roles at the moment.
How old is she?
She's 78, I think, 75. Yeah. 75. I don't want to add ages.
No.
He is to Stephanie Beecham, but she was fabulous.
But do you remember, I mean, thinking again of Remembrance Sunday, she was in Tenko. Do you remember Tenko?
Oh, I never watched it, but I know
It's about the women who were imprisoned by the Japanese in World War II. It was totally set in the women's prison. It was gruelling, but a fantastic bit of drama. And she was one of the major characters in that.
She's in
It really helped to make her name.
Absolute national treasure. I felt so honoured to interview her.
Was she nice or a bit of a diva?
She was so down to earth. I thought she was. You know, sometimes when you meet these celebrities, they've got a bit of a chip on their shoulders. She didn't have it at all.
No,
she was
she wouldn't.
very credible.
Oh, nice. Very nice. Talking about being credible or not.
Yeah.
David Williams.
Oh, so David Williams' position at Britain's Got Talent is hanging in a balance because The Guardian done an expose this week where they leaked transcripts where he was being quite rude and sexually explicit about two contestants on Britain's Got Talent in 2020. David's been forced to apologise, and he said, you know, it was a conversation, it was off air, it was never meant to be public, it was between friends, which he apologised for. But obviously ITV have come out and they said they do not condone this language that he's used, and also they're, you know, looking at him to kind of look at his future behaviour.
He's got to watch his image a bit now, hasn't he?
Yeah, I feel like he's gone from this Mr. Nice comedian guy to where now he's a bit controversial. As most comedians do, they get a bit of a slack. But I honestly don't know if his future is going to be secure on BGT because Psycho, Simon's company, have said they knew nothing about the conversation and it's not something really they would be associated with.
It doesn't go with their image, does it?
Yeah, I don't know.
But stuff being said off camera. Yeah. Said it on air or to the contestants.
Well, it's like us when we have chats. Well, they're all very nice chats off air, but again, it's off air. Like, you're not putting it out there, so I think it's quite...
I don't think you're ever off air completely.
Yeah.
Oh, Mecca, we're in trouble then, aren't we?
But we've seen many occasions where, like, you know, people have got in trouble for saying things off air, but it's the fact that this was a leaked transcript.
Yeah.
And then finally, Tiffany Trump has got married.
Oh, my gosh, yes. So Donald Trump, finally, he was off politics last night as he gave away his daughter, Tiffany, who got married to billionaire Michael Boulos. Obviously,
of course she did.
They're keeping the money in the family. But, yeah, Trump gave her away.
That Mar-a-Lago?
Yeah, no, I think... yeah, it looks like
I don't know.
White House.
That looks like the White House.
Yeah,
Oh, yes, that is the White House.
Yeah,
right.
yeah, he proposed. But it did take place in Mar-a-Lago last night, so everyone was there, including Melania Trump, who did not look happy to be dancing with Donald. Again, I was looking at some of the videos, and that woman always looked like she's being forced to dance with Donald. But it looked like it was a really good wedding. It was good to see Trump doing fatherly duties rather than chasing politics.
Yes, well, yes, quite
Funny
right
how
too.
the daughters and sons of millionaires tend to marry other millionaires.
Yeah. It could be quite intimidating if you haven't got the money to keep up.
Yeah. Well, absolutely.
True love, obviously.
Always wins.
Always, yes. Stephanie, thank you. We'll see you a little bit later
guys.
on.
Oh, yes. Well, stick around because we've got the newspapers coming up. Won't be long.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you know, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
My name's Tom Harwood, and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Every Friday and Sunday night from 9, it's Mark Dolan Tonight.
We're on the same page again. There's something weird happening.
Let Ian finish. Don't be such a cranky.
That mini budget was the tip of the iceberg.
And on Saturday, my show just got bigger. From 8, it's Mark Dolan's Saturday Night In.
You can't govern a country if you can't speak. Stop talking.
My God, we reached the end. I've never been early in my life. Only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Arlene Foster, for The Briefing on GB News. Every Friday at 3 p.m, I'll give you all the latest political news and analysis, and we'll have robust live debate. To make sure that you're caught up on all of the biggest issues of the day, we'll bring on experts in their field. I'll ask the questions that you'd like to ask. We're not afraid to tackle discussions from all perspectives, including yours. Don't forget, The Briefing with me, Arlene Foster, every Friday at 3 p.m. on GB News.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing! You see, amazing!
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
8:37. You're watching and listening to Breakfast with Stephen and Anne. Time to go through the papers. Broadcaster Claire Muldoon is here, and sadly, I've lost a tiny bit of respect for former head of counter-terrorism at the MOD, Major General Chip Chapman, because he's just told me he's never seen a Star Wars film. Never seen a Star Wars film.
I just think there is that entire catalogue of movies for you to watch.
Just waiting for you.
Yeah. You'll love it.
Yeah, before I die.
This Christmas.
Yeah.
It's bound to be on somewhere this Christmas.
It's good for the soul.
1977, that first one came out, episode 4, and it hasn't aged. It's brilliant.
Nor has Harrison Ford, to be fair.
Oh he has. Just a
not-
tad.
not
He's
that
brilliant,
bad.
though. He is. I love Harrison Ford.
Gorgeous.
Oh, no, that's definitely one.
Thank you, Stephen.
And then we'll get you on to Star Trek.
I do watch that.
You're redeemed.
Oh, there you go. Yes, semi-redeemed, anyway. Anyway, look to serious matters, Chip. Looking at the Sunday Telegraph, looking at Remembrance Sunday, which is today, of course.
Yes, it is Remembrance Sunday, so page 9 of the Telegraph headline about last night's Festival of Remembrance performance. Pride, sorrow and dignity come to the fore in poignant performances. And a really, really good first paragraph. At a time when the shallowness, vanity and sheer indignity of public life is enough to make one fear for the nation's future, we need a collective ceremony to remind us that this country is more than its politicians and its hucksters, and that out there, beyond the media glare, the quiet but essential virtues of service and loyalty are still alive and well. And that's what it's all about. And there are people who say that it glorifies war. It doesn't. And people like me would quote Herodotus, a 5th century BC ancient Greek philosopher, which is that no one prefers war to peace, because in peace, children bury their fathers, and in war, fathers bury their children.
Oh, yes.
And in total war, which the Second World War was, you also bury your mothers, as my father did, because my grandmother was killed in a Luftwaffe bombing raid in January 41 in the Plymouth Blitz when a collective air raid shelter was hit and 75 were killed. My father was left an orphan by war.
Oh, my goodness.
Oh.
But it is, I mean, I don't understand people who think it's about glorifying war. It's not, it's about glorifying peace.
And really, when it says about the hucksters and politicians, it's also worth noting, as one of the things I look at is, I look at politicians in 4 ways. That is, the first way, are they looking at self-interest? The second way, are they looking at their constituency interest? The third one, are they looking at just party interest? Or lastly, are they looking at national interest? And too many of them at the moment have been looking at their self-interest and party interest and not national interest and constituency interest.
That's definitely true. And also on that, we discussed earlier the fact that the front pages had got nothing at all about Remembrance Sunday in them. You have to delve into the inner, you know, the inside pages. And pride, sorrow, dignity, these beautiful words that, you know, are synonymous with peacetime and with remembrance. Well, how prolific is that for today in the Ukraine war? When we've got the pictures from, I think it's the Telegraph, of the girls together wrapped with their flag, that element of hope. And indeed, the whole of the Ukrainians have got, you know, with their pride, their sorrow and their dignity. If anything else, Remembrance Sunday today for our current climate, our current society, can be linked directly to the Ukraine.
I am very surprised that the newspapers haven't splashed it all over their front pages.
I thought they would have done. I thought they would have done more stuff from last night. Actually, it was. Did you watch it last night? Was it on a bit too late for you?
I had to go to bed fairly early to be here early this morning.
It was remarkable, actually. The whole thing was just beautiful. Even the, you know, and the service at the end with the Bishop of London and things. It was just.
Is there not, though, a danger of desensitisation that we were talking about earlier about the Ukraine war and the way we feel about it? Is there a danger that we will not be able to have the pomp and ceremony going forward with the personnel who have given their lives for us to live democratically?
What do you mean?
Well, you know, we've got these beautiful, lovely colours of all the different regiments, of all the different uniforms. And, you know, last night's spectacular spectacle, really, at the Royal Albert Hall. Is there a danger that as the population of the ex-infantry and soldiers and servicemen and women getting older, the byproduct of that, of course, is death. So what will they be able to do?
Well, I don't know. I think it will continue. It's the current...
The scale will change because, of course, the First and Second World War were mass industrial wars. And the reality for the British Army or armed forces since World War II is we've only, which is a terrible word, had 7,500 killed in action since 1945, which is an absolutely good thing. So for the last 77 years, we've lost 7,500 people. We lost 250,000 military in the Second World War, 750,000 in the First World War. But the memorialisation of this is evident for everyone to see all around the country because there are only 14 places in England and Wales that don't have a war memorial. So these were community tragedies in the First and Second World War, as well as large-scale national tragedies. And for example, to give you an illustration of that, I was walking in a village near me, Perth Corndall, wonderful name of a village in Somerset. Population in World War I, 170. Half of those were probably blokes, 85. Probably 40 of military age, 4 killed in action in a village. That is a community tragedy. And it is in those communities that we should remember it. Of course, we've sort of got into a more urban context these days, and we can forget that. But those villages dotted all around, that's to be seen everywhere. And it's worth remembering, of course, that prior to 1921, Ireland, as an island, also had no hamlet, village, city that didn't lose someone. So there was mass slaughter for the population of all of Ireland, not just Northern Ireland.
But we don't just need that to remember, do we? We have a media nowadays who can play their part in this.
Yeah, but look, the media...
I know, I am very shocked about the newspapers, but we, for instance, we've been talking about it all morning, we have been for the last couple of days, and people have been emailing in with their wonderful stories, and that's how we remember. We may not have been affected ourselves by war, but we know and we interview and we watch people who have been. So I think, we all play our part in keeping this going, don't we?
We
It's very
can't
important.
forget. I don't think.
But
as a
you said
nation
that
we
last night at the service there was a family of children came from
from the Falklands. And I thought that was a very interesting point because there are people. There was a lady who stood up very powerfully and made read out a statement. Well, it was a letter from her father, and it was the last letter he wrote to her, and then he didn't come back from the Falklands. And that was very moving, actually. But then after that, there was a group of about 12 teenagers, kids, really, from the Falklands who'd been flown in. And one of them, the eldest, I guess, spoke to say, we thank you for what you did and for securing our future. And it was he spoke very well, this young man, but it was very powerful.
Yeah, and I tweeted something this morning. That,
I was going to say, Robert Fox, legendary war reporter Robert Fox was in here yesterday. He started blubbing as well when asked who he remembers on Remembrance Sunday. So we just have to play our part, don't we?
And I was with Robert at Goose Green in 1982.
Gosh, yes, you would have been.
And
yes.
I tweeted something this morning, which was the mission of 2-Para was to capture Darwin and Goose Green. The mission was achieved, but 18 people still hold that ground today, and they're the ones I will remember today.
Yeah. Oh, dear. Joan, just to bring this in at this point, Joan says, my mother's cousin, Charles Johnson, was a Royal Marine who was 2 months short of his 20th birthday when he was killed during the D-Day landings in 1944. He's buried at the Portsmouth Naval Memorial Cemetery in Hampshire.
Yes. Not everybody came home to be buried either, did they?
No.
Carol from Poole says, my uncle, Albert Vincent Loftus, what a wonderful name, was only 19 years old when he was ambushed with others from his battalion. His mother never knew where he was buried. 1 year after her death, we found Albert and visited his grave in Belgium. Our grandson has his name now. We will never forget him. We're all going here, aren't we?
We're all off. But it's important. I think it's important to have some emotion through all of this.
Yes.
Anyway, let's move on to the Sunday Express. Mary Portas.
Oh,
Mary Portas.
Where's she been for a long time?
Well, we spoke about urbanisation and we used the term urban a few minutes ago. So basically, Mary Portas has now said, act now or half shops will shut. And what she means is the independence that, saw everyone through COVID, actually, and really helped people through COVID. The problem is the death of the high street.
Yeah.
The model of buying clothes, buying shopping, buying anything, groceries, has changed.
Yes.
Not only because of the pandemic, but the shift from companies like Amazon.
It's evolved.
Where we
And
can
we've got to
get
evolve with it.
anything when we want it. It's that instant.
The pandemic accelerated that, though,
It did indeed.
yeah.
It did indeed. And of course, we weren't allowed to go out anywhere, so you couldn't walk into a shop, and face masks and all the social distancing and things. Now, we're not talking about the major grocery stores or the major shops here. We're actually talking about the independents. And I'm a firm believer in independence, and I think we all should shop independently where we can, because it's the backbone. Small businesses, small and medium-sized businesses are the backbone of the British economy.
But they've got to evolve.
Yes, Stephen, you say that, but
they've got to, and I'll tell you for why. I bought something, I won't tell you what it was, which you could buy anywhere, and I ended up buying it from a small shop, a tiny local shop in somewhere like Blackburn or something, because they came up on a Google search and had it at the best price.
Right.
It was a piece of clothing. Bought it from them. Now, that's how they've got to evolve. They've got to evolve by getting online, doing the good deals.
Can I also
that.
say local councils have got to improve parking, because the way if you want to pop into your local shop or pop along to the high street
there is no parking.
There is no way you can ever park.
There's plenty of cycle lanes.
Yeah, you're penalised if you want to park anywhere. There are no
stationary
car
traffic.
parks. They sell their local car parks to build high-rise flats and all the rest of it. I know all these things are necessary, but it's up to councils to make it easy to park.
I'm with you,
my sake.
but also there's no this hasn't changed in 10 years when she was the czar for David Cameron.
Yeah. Mind you, I interviewed her once and she was less than impressive.
Really?
And that stuck with me, actually. Yeah, it was down the line, but she just had nothing to say. I was very, very disappointed. So I don't hold a lot of faith. Claire Muldoon, Major General Chip Chapman, there we must leave it. But thank you very much.
Thank you very
indeed.
much.
Thank you
for being
very
here
much.
today. Yeah, and helping us remember in the way that we all think we should remember.
Yes. Well, of course, as a nation, we'll remember today, and for the first time as monarch, it will be led by the King. He's going to lay a new wreath at the cenotaph.
Yes, and then about 10,000 people are going to take part in the Royal British Legion's march past, paying tribute to all of those they are there for, but also, of course, for Her late Majesty the Queen.
Well, let's talk to our royal reporter, Cameron Walker, who's in Horse Guards Parade for us this morning. Cameron, it's going to be a busy day, but a momentous day, the turning of a new page in our history.
Good morning. Yes, it certainly is going to be a busy day. Crowds are already started building here at Horse Guards Parade, just the other side of Whitehall, where the cenotaph is placed. And 101 Navy sailors, Marines and Royal Naval nurses will be marching past the cenotaph a little bit later on this morning. And I am joined by Lieutenant Commander Simon Herndon, who has served so far 27 years in the Royal Navy. Welcome to GB News, Simon.
Good morning, Cameron. Yep, thank you very much.
You have quite a family connection with the Royal Navy, don't you?
Yes, so my two granddads served in the Navy during the Second World War. One was in the Arctic convoys and the other one was out in the Far East, which visited Hiroshima and Nagasaki after the bombs had been dropped there. And then my father has followed his father, and I followed my father as well into the Navy. My son has equally followed me. So, but today, with it being the 40th remembrance of the Falklands, I'm pleased to say that my uncle is also here, who was serving on HMS Sheffield at the time that it was hit, and unfortunately sunk with those individuals on board. But he survived, and he's here to do the parade today. So,
I mean, what's an honour for you to march alongside him?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's an honour to be here in front of all the veterans, but obviously a poignant time now to be here in front of him whilst he marches past me as well.
What's the draw to the Royal Navy? What do you like about being in it?
I think it's a sense of pride, sense of community, serving the previous Queen, and now obviously His Majesty the King. So yeah, sense of pride.
And you mentioned Her late Majesty there. A number of naval ratings are here today who took part in the Queen's funeral procession, aren't there?
Yes, there are a number of the junior rates in my Royal Navy platoon that did actually pull the funeral along for the late Queen.
And the fact that she is no longer Commander-in-Chief, the longest-serving Commander-in-Chief, and you now have a new one, King Charles III. How does that make you feel, being the first one?
Again, it's a sense of pride, a sense of honour, and yes, we'll go down in history as being the first ones to do it in front of the new King.
And you were at the Royal Albert Hall last night at the Festival of Remembrance. Quite an experience. You were saying you couldn't look down, that you didn't want to trip down some steps. You had to keep looking forward.
Yeah, it's one of those tricky moments where you're not allowed to look down. You've got to keep looking straight forward and go down a set of stairs, which is not as easy as it might sound. But everyone managed to get down and in place without falling over.
I can imagine. Well done. Remembrance, of course, is a time to remember those who have fallen and given their lives for the service of their country, World War I, World War II. But, of course, there's a number of other conflicts, aren't there, which we need to remember?
Yeah, I mean, there's conflicts that have gone on since then, obviously, Iraq, Afghanistan, that we need to remember those that have also fallen. And I think certainly the sailors I'm aware of that they understand the sense of pride, the sense of understanding of what they're doing when they march past, stand still, watching the veterans, and then obviously marching back through the streets of London.
Lieutenant Commander, thank you very much for speaking to me this morning.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, the King is going to be leading the nation in tribute and remembrance, and he will lay a new wreath at the cenotaph for the first time as sovereign.
Cameron, thank you.
Oh, I love seeing all of those military people gathering behind, all wearing their medals. There was a dog there as well we just saw go past. It's a wonderful sight, and it will be brilliant later on as well.
I just think when people like Cameron, who's on the younger side compared to us, but to be stood there and I think surrounded by whether it's serving or veteran, And I think you have to have respect,
Yeah.
don't you, for what they've been through or what they're going through, and real admiration, actually. I'm quite sure Cameron feels that as a sensible
I'm sure
boy.
he will. Yeah, absolutely.
Anyway.
Do stay with us. We've got lots more to come after the weather.
Let's look ahead to the weather. In the UK, is going to be generally dry, cloudy in the east, rain moving in for the west. So these are the details for you.
A dry but cloudy day for southwest England, with some low cloud lingering across high ground. Breezy in the west, particularly at the coasts, highs of 15.
Dry across the southeast with sunny spells, although cloudier in the north and west. Light winds and feeling mild, about 16 degrees.
And then dry throughout Wales on Sunday today, with sunny intervals and cloud mostly confined to the east. Breezy at western coasts and highs of 16.
Now, a cloudier day across the Midlands, although some sunnier spells at times, mainly in the south and west. Light winds and feeling pretty warm in any sunshine. Again, those temperatures pretty good, about 15 degrees.
A grey day, though, in the northeast, with some low cloud lingering into the afternoon. Perhaps some brighter spells in the west at times. Breezy across any high ground, highs of 13.
A fine day across southern Scotland, plenty of prolonged sunny spells. Scattered showers and cloud at times. Breezy in the west, about 14 or 15 degrees.
And then in Northern Ireland, dry mostly, with some brighter spells, but rain approaching from the west later. Breezy again, particularly at the coasts, and a maximum temperature of 15.
So a band of heavy rain and strong winds moving in from the west, staying mostly dry elsewhere. And that's your weather today.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and tune-in apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Are authorities, are communities doing all they can to combat violent crime? With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. There's never been a more interesting but also critical time in British politics, and I can't wait to bring you the biggest stories of the day with the best factual accuracy and also a few of my own opinions thrown in. We'll engage in passionate but always polite debate with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Monday to Thursday, 10 till 12 on TV, on radio and online.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
And the national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
On the Mark Stein Show, we cover the stories a lot of people are scared even to mention. The stuff that really matters with some of the world's biggest thinkers.
Now is his opportunity to kind of take the steering wheel of history.
Break away from the flop at 8 o'clock on GB News with the Mark Stein Show.
We are GB News.
And we'd like to say thank you
To each and every one of you.
for helping our great nation.
Find its voice.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Across England, Scotland,
Wales and Northern Ireland.
On TV.
On radio.
And online.
We're proud to be
The People's Channel.
Britain's
News channel.
And King Charles III will host for the first time the Remembrance Sunday services today, following in the footsteps of Her Majesty the Queen.
Good morning to you. It's 9 o'clock. It's Sunday, the 13th of November. This is Breakfast on GB News with Stephen and Anne.
And we're live across the whole of the UK on both your TV and your radio. Wherever you are, you can take us with you. Here are your top stories this morning.
Well, the nation will fall silent today as the King, for the first time as monarch, leads a moving Remembrance Day service. King Charles III will lay a new poppy wreath incorporating his colours, with the design paying tribute to his mother and his grandfather, King George VI.
Stay with us as we remember those who cannot be with us today and reflect on the sacrifices made by our veterans and service people.
The Prime Minister vows to call out Putin's regime at the G20 meeting. He says the summit will not be business as usual. It's in Bali. He's heading there today.
And as ever, of course, you know, you can join in any of our discussions by emailing us gbviews@gbnews.uk. And as it's Remembrance Sunday, we'd still love to hear from you as to who you are remembering today and what you'll be doing and why it's important to you. Tracy says, during the pandemic, I organised my knitting army, over 100 ladies, knitting through the lockdowns, and we created this. Oh, wow.
Oh, it's just like a sea of poppies overflowing an altar and...
Oh, and purple poppies
as well
for the
animals.
dogs, in the shape of a horse's head, that one, I think, yes. Your knitting army are brilliant at what they do.
Wonderful. We show it each year for the Royal British Legion's Remembrance Day, but also for all the animals,
yes,
she says.
I love it.
That's absolutely beautiful. It reminds me of the poppy display that they did at the Tower of London, when it sort of flew down.
Yeah.
I've got one of those
Me
poppies.
too,
Have you?
yeah.
It's a wonderful thing to have one.
Yes.
That was 20 quid well spent.
Oh, it was absolutely beautiful, that. Absolutely brilliant. Robert says, my dad was on the Malta and Russian convoys. His ship, until sunk, was cruiser HMS Penelope, affectionately known as Pepper Pot and Porcupine, due to all the holes she had in her hull, filled with wooden pegs. He never got home for 4 years.
Oh,
Those were hard convoys.
Oh,
my goodness.
weren't they? I say weren't they as if I know, but do you know what I mean?
I know
From
about the
what we read
Maltese
about
convoy,
them.
yeah.
Craig says, on this day, I remember two great uncles, Private Lewis Stevenson, who died on the 1st of June 1918 at the age of 20, and Private Edward Harrison, who died 17th of June 1940, aged 37. He was killed on the SS Lancastrian, a little-known tragedy of the Second World War, the biggest single loss of life up until then, and suppressed by the government for moral purposes.
Oh.
And Craig also served in the army for a number of years.
Sounds like an interesting story too, doesn't it?
Isn't it interesting, though, that everyone actually has got a story?
Yeah. Robin says, my grandfather, John B. Edgar, joined up at 19 in the Royal Lancashire Regiment. He was wounded in the first few days. He spent 15 months recuperating. Interesting to note that wounded soldiers were given a silver badge to show that they were, in fact, wounded, and that's why they weren't in uniform. Otherwise, shops wouldn't serve them. He then went out to France again, was wounded again, captured by the Germans, and spent the rest of the war as a POW. Sadly, his medals were stolen in a burglary.
I mean, burglary's bad enough, but stealing medals, please, have you no morals? No morals at all?
None at all.
Anyway, keep your thoughts coming through, keep your stories coming through, and it's nice that we can remember these people with you. actually, because it is a day of remembrance, of course, and it is the first time that the King will lead it as monarch. And by doing so, he's laying a new wreath at the cenotaph.
And then about 10,000 people taking part in the Royal British Legion's march past, paying tribute to those that they love, those that they remember, and, of course, Her late Majesty the Queen.
Well, let's head to Andover because, of course, commemorations are being held right across the country. Alice Porter is there for us this morning with clearly a very special guest. Alice, morning.
Good morning. That's right. Indeed, about 3,000 people will be coming here to Andover to pay their respects to people who lost their lives in the war. And I'm joined by Duncan Powell, who runs the Andover branch of the Royal British Legion. I know you've got a very busy morning ahead of you, so thank you so much for giving up your time today. I mean, firstly, what are the logistics with getting 3,000 people? We've got the St Mary's Church to my right. We've got this area here in front of your local monument. I mean, it's an enormous operation, really, and you're organising it.
Well, we assist Test Valley Borough Council to organise things. Sharon Goodridge in the Mayor's office, she does a lot of the background work in inviting people, and we're supported by 22 Engineer Regiment, Royal Engineers, and the Army Air Corps from Middle Wallop. And we have a parade which starts down in Bridge Street and marches around the town, forms up in here, where we've got, say, a lot of the public, 3,000 were here in previous years. We expect about the same this year. I'm responsible for putting all the poppies out and everything else for Andover and district. We do 19 odd villages for the poppy appeal, as well as the town. And I just organise placement of the poppies.
And what's so important, I always find with Remembrance Sundays, yes, people will watch it on the TV and will watch what's going on at the cenotaph, but in every village, in every town across the country, there are wonderful monuments like this, individual cenotaphs, which just show that whilst, of course, in major cities there's always big parades, but actually it is a local issue, and these are local towns. Whole swathes of young men would go off to fight when we look back to World War I, and it is very much a local way that people do show their respect.
That's right. In some of the villages, just single monument, and for example in Crawley, I've just provided a wreath for them to lay at their memorial, and that's just a couple who lay it every year for remembrance.
And of course, Andover has particular significance. I was interested to know that's actually the headquarters for the British Army, and there's an incredible history here, isn't there, with the military in terms of the RAF, in terms of, you know, it was actually, the airfield here was actually attacked when the Battle of Britain. So it's amazing to think there's that history there, very much so.
Well, I used to live on the airfield when I was serving at the Logistic Executive, when it was a Logistic Executive. Then it became the Army headquarters, and which is where my son's actually serving at the moment.
Now, I'm going to have to, before we go, just ask about the medals, because I have had a very quick lesson before this interview. Now, knowing that they're on your right-hand side means that they belong to a relative. So I know you're from your father, and these are your medals. Do you want to just very briefly just tell, sort of, is there one in particular of your father's that you'd like to talk about?
Well, you've got the 1939-1945 stars, the War in Europe, the General Service Medal for Palestine and Malaya, as opposed to Malaysia as it is now, and the undetected crime. In his day it was 21 years, mine was 16 years.
Well, thank you very much for speaking to us. Really appreciate it. I know you've got to get on, you've got lots to organise. Thanks very much for letting us come along. We're here at St Mary's Church in Andover, where around 3,000 people are expected to come and pay their respects on Remembrance Sunday.
Absolutely.
Alice, thank you very much.
And just as Alice said, today isn't just about the big do in Whitehall, is it? It's, although that is spectacular, it is about every village and town in this country that has one of those memorials, and that's so important. Can I just read out from Carol instead?
Oh, yes.
This is the most incredible story too. She says, my paternal grandfather left Poland before World War I broke out. He arrived in America, and in due course he signed up for the US Army. He came home alive, but with a bullet in his leg, which remained in him forever. His son, my dad, when young, had rheumatic heart disease, so couldn't go and fight, but he joined instead the Army Air Corps, was shipped to Guam, where he packed parachutes. He swore that he'd never set foot on a ship again, again. He did bring home one of the silk parachutes, though, which was made into my mum's wedding gown.
Wow.
My mum got her wedding gown was made of parachute.
Was
Yeah, parachute silk. Yeah, it's the only way you could get silk. My uncle, Dad's brother, served during the Korean War. His nephew, my cousin, served in Vietnam, where sadly he met Agent Orange and is now slowly dying of cancer. There's only 9 months between us in age. Not one of them will talk about their time in the armed forces. That's what it's like, isn't it?
People don't want to talk. Isn't it interesting? Agent Orange.
Oh, do you remember?
Oh. Dear me, well,
but yes, there were
sorry about
lots
that.
of brides were married shortly after the war and during the war as well in parachute silk. It was the only way you could lay your hand on anything that would make a nice wedding gown. And my mother was very, very skinny. And of course, wedding gowns from that era were very, very skinny because you couldn't afford to use much silk. So the skinnier you were, the cheaper the dress. Yes, exactly. Yeah.
How interesting. I didn't know that. Parachute silk, wow. There you go. Any more of your thoughts, any more of your stories, get in touch. gbviews@gbnews.uk. Now, let's turn our attention to politics and geopolitics, if you like that term, because the Prime Minister's heading to Bali today for the G20 summit, where, of course, they're going to talk about efforts to tackle the global financial crisis. And amidst all of that, of course, is Vladimir Putin and the Russian invasion of Ukraine, which has sparked a lot of this.
And Rishi Sunak is expected to make a speech calling out President Putin. Now, he's not going, but he is instead sending his foreign minister, Sergei Lavrov.
Now, meanwhile, back home on a different matter, Tory MPs coming out in defence of the Deputy Prime Minister, Dominic Raab. He's been accused of aggressive behaviour at the Ministry of Justice.
So for more on this, let's talk to GB News' political reporter, Catherine Foster. And my goodness, yes, there's a lot going on, isn't there? Interesting that Rishi Sunak is going to make a point of calling out Vladimir Putin. That's what we're being briefed, isn't it?
Yes, and I'm sure he won't be alone in that, because I think most of the world is united in condemning the actions of Russia. Obviously, there's this great victory in Kherson, but we will see how this will play out. So, yes, he's flying there today. He will be arriving back on Thursday morning in time for the autumn statement. And he will be very keen to be seen to be strong again in support for Ukraine. Volodymyr Zelensky, we believe, may appear via Zoom. Vladimir Putin, obviously, staying in Russia because nobody's going to want to talk to him. Sergei Lavrov, the foreign minister, likely to be very awkward for him as well.
He's not the most popular man at the best of times.
He always looks deeply grumpy. And in fact, the G20 foreign leaders meeting in the summer, he walked out because understandably, he was coming in for a lot of criticism. So I think it will be a tense meeting. And also the US and President Xi Jinping of China there as well. A lot of tensions there too, and indeed in our relationship with China as well. So.
But you see, there's no point in a G20 if everyone's just going to yell and scream and then come home again. There must be something going on behind the scenes which could make this a productive meeting.
Yes, and sometimes an actual meeting in person can make progress, can't it, where before there hasn't been any. So I think it'll be very interesting to see what happens with President Biden, with Xi Jinping. They're supposed to be meeting in person. Will Rishi Sunak meet President Biden? Probably he will. But in terms of Russia, I mean, there's starting to be calls for peace talks. But what will that mean? Because Ukraine will not want, will they, to concede any territory that is currently occupied by Russia?
No, I mean, it's difficult for us, the rest of us, to know where it could lead. But if they're talking, at least maybe that's something. Meanwhile, President Biden has enjoyed a sort of success overnight with the midterms now coming in, and they've managed to keep the Senate, that's right. And with the Vice President now having the casting vote if there should ever be a stalemate.
Yeah, so this is a big achievement, isn't it? Because before the Senate was split 50-50, Kamala Harris had the casting vote. Now with the result, yesterday Arizona stayed Democrat and Nevada also. Georgia, we won't know till the 5th of December, but in some ways it doesn't matter now because of Kamala Harris's casting vote, the Democrats maintain control of the Senate, which is significant. They're still likely to lose the House of Representatives, but again, we won't know that for a while. That's very tight too.
I mean, this was meant to be, and we had Republicans abroad, Greg Swanson on the other day, and they were justifiably talking about a red wave That was what was expected. And it just hasn't really happened.
It hasn't, has it? And the Democrats, having been very optimistic, were quite down in the dumps going into these. They were very worried that this red wave would materialise, that they would lose one house, possibly both houses, leaving Joe Biden as a lame duck. That hasn't happened. And as you say, the House of Representatives, we don't know necessarily that the Republicans will take that. But it does seem that Donald Trump has perhaps not proved the electoral asset which he is convinced he is, because some of these people that have been losing are election deniers that are going along with Donald Trump's message that the election was stolen. And it seems that a lot of Americans are not buying that and do, in fact, want a little calmness, a little respect for the voting system. OK, sure, it's not perfect. It's taking them a long time to count votes. But this appetite for saying the election's been stolen, this divisiveness, does seem to have had an effect, and people largely are rejecting
What effect
it.
is that going to have on President Biden himself as to whether he stands again?
Well, yes, I mean, in some ways, the Democrats aren't that keen to have him stand again. He's about to be 80. His personal approval ratings are absolutely dire. The Vice President Kamala Harris's ratings are not good either. The problem is, at the moment, they really don't know who they would replace him with. There was talk last week, which I think really is a measure of how desperate they would be, of possibly bringing back Hillary Clinton, even, whereas the Republicans...
She's divisive.
Certainly, and the Republicans seem to have more options, but Donald Trump is supposedly going to declare that he's standing on Tuesday, but he's not terribly happy. And Ron DeSantis does look like the heir apparent now, doesn't he, for
Well,
Republicans?
it'd be interesting to see what happens on Tuesday with that promised announcement. I still think Pete Buttigieg, who Mayor Pete as he was, he's now in the cabinet. I can't remember quite what his position is. But Youngblood is mid-40s or something.
Michelle Obama? I know they desperately tried to chat her up, didn't they?
She won't do it, will she?
She doesn't want to do it.
She doesn't want to do it. I
doesn't
don't
want
blame
to
her
do
at
it.
all.
But Donald Trump, I mean, it's interesting, not just to Make America Great Again, but now on the podium he's got Save America, you know? That messaging, yeah. But it's to some people's taste, but clearly not to lots of Americans.
No, Catherine, thank you. I was struck by, I did tweet it actually, but there was a clip from an interview that he did with an American network.
Who, Biden?
Trump.
Oh, Trump, yeah.
Trump, just before the vote, where he said he endorsed 100-odd candidates, whatever it was, and he said, if they win, yes, of course, I should take all the credit, but if they lose, it's not my fault. He said it in one sentence.
Yes, I know, and he believes it.
And he does believe it.
He doesn't see anything wrong in it.
No. I mean, that's what I struggle with. Whatever you think of Trump, that's what I struggle with. Talk about being self-deluded. If a politician said that over here, they'd be hung, drawn and quartered.
Or taken to the jungle.
Or taken to the jungle. But there you go. Anyway, I'm sure some of you will disagree with me on that one, but I just thought saying that just sums him up for me. That you can't have it both. You can't have it both ways.
But I think if you have lived his sort of life, where you deal with enormous amounts of money, yes, you lose money for here, yes, you take money from there, you just gloss over everything, don't you? You begin to believe your own publicity. You pay the people who deliver you the publicity, and then you believe it.
Yeah.
They just live on another planet, frankly.
Yeah. Anyway, let us know what
Makes
you
sense
think.
to
If you've
him.
got a view, GBViews, gbnews.uk. You might have a view coming up next, as we're going to lighten things up a little bit, actually, as we need to today. We've got sport and showbiz with Aidan and Stephanie, so don't go anywhere.
We are GB News.
And we'd like to say thank you.
To each and every one of you.
For helping our great nation
Find its voice.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Across England,
Scotland, Wales,
And Northern Ireland. On TV.
on radio, and online.
We're proud to be
The People's Channel.
Britain's
News Channel. Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
On the Mark Steyn Show, we cover the stories a lot of people are scared even to mention. The stuff that really matters with some of the world's biggest thinkers.
Now is his opportunity to kind of take the steering wheel of history.
Break away from the flock at 8 o'clock on GB News with the Mark Steyn Show.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
Hello, I'm Alastair Stewart, and I'd invite you to join me at noon on Saturdays and Sundays for Alastair Stewart and Friends. I've been in this business for over 40 years. Now, here at GB News, I've never been happier. I get to choose the big stories that really interest me. We hear what you have to say, and you hear what I have to say. I really hope you can join me, noon on Saturdays and Sundays.
I'm Mark Dolan. Join me at 11 on GB News for Headliners, in which I'll be joined by two of the UK's top comedians discussing tomorrow's papers. If it's an important story, we'll cover it, but we'll have some fun along the way. Headliners, the late night paper review that won't send you to sleep like the others will. 7 nights a week at 11 p.m. on GB News.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
"9:21, you're watching and listening to Breakfast with Stephen and Anne, and Stephanie and Aidan, actually.
Yeah, absolutely.
But before we talk to these two retrobates, Sandra from Wimborne says, "Hi, Anne and Stephen. My furry grandson, Reuben, will be wearing his poppy with pride on his walk today."
Get it, the furry.
Furry grandson. Have we got the picture? Oh, there we go.
Doesn't he look smart?
God bless all our heroes, past and present. Thank you for your service.
Oh, that's a really lovely picture. Thank you very much.
Ah, Reuben, you're a beauty. Black lab. Absolutely gorgeous.
Do you remember we were talking earlier about bamboo and how it can be used in all sorts of different sort of products nowadays? It's more sustainable and eco-friendly. And we were talking about the fact that there is actually bamboo toilet paper you can buy. It's still pretty expensive. But Billy from Airdrie, morning Billy, has got in touch. She said, "Hi, guys. This talk of bamboo toilet paper has given me an idea and a marketing light bulb moment."
You shouldn't tell us.
Bamboo. Will be patented by the end of the day. Thanks for making me a millionaire. Have a great day.
Oh, you go for it, Billy.
We'll watch out for bamboo toilet paper.
That's a really...
I like that. It is good, yeah.
I don't think it's out there, so you're on to a winner. Anyway, as I said, Stephanie and Aidan are here.
Good morning.
Morning, you two.
Good morning.
Retrobate.
Yeah, was
it?
it?
Did.
Yeah.
We used to be reprobates.
Yes.
Yeah.
Reprobate. Did I say retro?
You said retrobate.
Yeah.
I mean,
I wondered if you were having a dig in something.
Yeah, why did you call us that?
No,
Stephen?
I'm just inventing words as I go.
Oh.
There you go. Anyway, Aidan, let's talk Ivan Toney.
Yeah, that's right. Well,
Man of the moment, then not, then is again.
Well, yeah, we've been mentioning him quite a bit recently. I mean, not many people knew this bloke about 18 months ago.
I'd never heard of him.
No.
But no, he went a long way round in terms of getting into the Premier League. He did it the hard way. He has this great season and a half with Brentford. Probably tails off a little bit just in time for the World Cup announcement, the World Cup squad announcement, but it was the gambling thing. But he's assisting the FA with inquiries. The suggestion that there may be some irregular betting. He's just assisting with inquiries at the moment. So there's no suggestion of any legal wrongdoing. But then gets left out of the squad. We don't know if the two things are related. That was on Thursday in preference for Callum Wilson of Newcastle. And then just to prove a point, he goes to Manchester City, where Brentford haven't won since 1937. Manchester City have been imperious there for many years now, actually. Yes, they did lose against Tottenham last season, but it's not often they lose at home. He scores twice in Brentford's 2-1 win. The winning goal, upstaging Erling Haaland, of course, another one not going to the World Cup because Norway didn't qualify. And he scores in about, I think it's the 9th minute or 8th minute of added time to secure a victory for Brentford, who'd won 2 of their previous 10. So an astonishing performance. I watched it last night. I could scarcely believe it when it was coming through on the radio that he'd done it. And I just wonder whether it was the perfect riposte. Well, it was the perfect riposte to Gareth Southgate. I do think, though, sometimes you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. You know, if Ivan Toney had been selected, then maybe his rival Callum Wilson might have scored a hat-trick for Newcastle against Chelsea. So a great story, but unless someone gets injured now before they pull away on the plane tomorrow, then he's staying at home, sadly, and he won't be back in action until Boxing Day. And that was the other thing. I mean, the Premier League we didn't really mention it yesterday, but it went out with a bang yesterday, not back now till Christmas. It means Arsenal will be top of the pile for Christmas, 5 points clear of Man City.
It's like a football shutdown, isn't it?
It is a little bit, yes. It's my mouth will have to shut for a bit.
Don't tempt us, Aidan. Don't tempt us. Now, Stephanie, when it comes to the world of show, Stephanie is very glamorous.
I do try.
You headed off to Manchester last night.
Yeah, last night I was in
fancy
Manchester.
ball.
Obviously, I'm a big Manchester United fan, so being in Manchester, I was like, oh, I'm home. But I was there actually for a good cause. A lovely businessman called Michael Josephson, he held a charity ball. Over the past 3 years, he's raised £7.5 million for child charities. He himself, he grew up in foster care and he was abused as a child, and he's really turned his story around, and he's just does his best to help children. So last night he held his ball in Hilton Deansgate and he raised over £760,000 in one night, which is all going to go towards making children's Christmases much better. And obviously the showbiz glitterati was there, including Stephanie Beacham. It was a when Stephanie met Stephanie moment, and it was amazing to hear her support for the charity as well.
We have got a picture, haven't we?
Oh yeah, that's the moment. That is the moment. Stephanie,
that's lovely.
Wow. She's ever so glam, and she says she watches the show. Guys, I actually want to say hello to all of our viewers up north in Manchester, because
we were in Hilton Deansgate. We broadcast there back in March with Eamon. I went up there.
Up north, they're so much friendlier than Londoners. Definitely. One guy said, I watch you guys all the time. I was oh my gosh, he actually recognises me from TV, but there was a lot of love last night.
And Stephanie said she watches?
Yeah, she watches. So good morning, Stephanie.
Stephanie
Beacham.
You better come on the show.
Yeah, we want
you. I just had just outside here about half an hour ago, had a serviceman with all his military regalia come up and shake my hand and say, keep up all the good work on the channel. He said he's fed up. He likes watching our channel instead of all the other rubbish out there.
Yeah, absolutely. So we are getting out there.
You were also met there, though, at Bonnie Langford.
Yeah, and
she's been back on the telly, of course. She was in the
Doctor Who. Yeah, she said, I was speaking to her about that last night as well. She said she filmed that during the pandemic, and she said it was incredible. So I was like, are you going to come back to EastEnders? She said, maybe. Maybe it's on the cards. But she's impressive to talk to. Like, she performed last night, and her voice is still in tip-top shape, and she's had this career for over 50 years.
Oh,
and
yes,
it's just
absolutely.
incredible.
She started as a child.
All the showbiz great. So it was a really great night last night.
Where was the +1 on this?
I never get +1s. I'm always Billy No Mate, so it forces me to talk to everyone in the room, which is good.
It's good. Get a +1. I'll get a +2. Get a +3.
Yeah,
+3. Excuse to spend some more aftershave, isn't it?
Well, this is it.
You don't need an excuse.
Lovely, Stephanie Aidan. Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah, it's good to see you.
Right.
I like a bit of showbiz. She knows them all, you know, doesn't she?
No, but you go around all over the place, always buzzing around.
I feel like so lucky.
It's exhausting.
A book's coming soon, guys.
I'll write the forward.
Good.
Look, don't go anywhere. We've got plenty more coming up for you, including commemorating Remembrance Sunday.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
My name's Tom Harwood, and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today. I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked. Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Every Friday and Sunday night from 9, it's Mark Dolan Tonight.
We're on the same page again. There's something weird happening.
Let Ian finish. Don't be such a cranky.
That mini budget was the tip of the iceberg.
And on Saturday, my show just got bigger. From 8, it's Mark Dolan's Saturday Night In.
You can't govern a country if you can't speak. Stop talking.
My God, we reached the end. I've never been early in my life. Only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Arlene Foster, for The Briefing on GB News. Every Friday at 3 p.m, I'll give you all the latest political news and analysis, and we'll have robust live debate. To make sure that you're caught up on all of the biggest issues of the day, we'll bring on experts in their field. I'll ask the questions that you'd like to ask. We're not afraid to tackle discussions from all perspectives, including yours. Don't forget, The Briefing with me, Arlene Foster, every Friday at 3 p.m. on GB News.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing! You see, amazing!
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
"7:32, very nearly. You're watching and listening to Breakfast with Stephen and Anne.
Now, we've been covering all day the fact that it's Remembrance Sunday and the King's going to lead the nation today for the first time as monarch.
And of course, we'll have the 2-minute silence at 11 o'clock, wreaths laid by members of the royal family at the Cenotaph in London. But it's all about real people as well, all of this. And you will remember that over the past year, we've talked quite a lot to Paul Minter, a veteran who went on this remarkable round-the-country run to raise money for Head Up, which is a charity he founded to help serving members of the armed forces and veterans deal with mental health problems, because there's a lot of mental health issues. Anyway, he's come back in again this morning, now that he's had time to rest those legs after your... What was it, 5,000 miles?
5,000 miles, yes.
I mean, good grief. I mean, it was a remarkable feat. It was amazing to watch the tracker every day to see where you were getting up to and all the stuff you're posting on Instagram. What's it feel like now that you have done it? It's been almost a year since we first had you on.
It feels really good to actually stop running, I'm not going to lie. But it feels even better now that we can focus solely on the charity, getting the retreat up and running, and start to help the people that we set out to help in the first place.
Yeah, because we need to remind everybody, I suppose, that your ultimate aim is to build, really, a retreat where people who have got struggles of various sorts and need to get away or need counselling or anything like that, they've got somewhere to go to do it.
Yeah, it's so important to have more and more of these places out there where people can go to and get help. And there are lots of help. There's lots of help out there, but a lot of people don't know what sort of help they need or where they can go to. So it's so important to have a big variation of different things that people can go to and see what sort of help works best for them. And I feel that Head Up Charity, the retreat that we're going to have and develop, is going to help so many people, almost anyone. Anyone can use the methods that we're going to teach people and strengthen their mindset and mental resilience.
It's interesting because on Remembrance Sunday, and what we saw at the Festival of Remembrance last night and things, we remember those who have died predominantly, don't we? But we also need to remember those people who survive but come out changed, whether it's, you know, physical injuries or mental injuries as well as a result of what they've been through.
Yeah, it's so important to remember those that gave everything. And a day like today is the perfect day to really be grateful for what they gave. But there's so many people that go on the battlefield, and very few people can go on the battlefield and come back and be completely unscathed. The things you do, the things you go through, and the mindset you have to go be in to do the things you do is almost unchangeable. So there's so many different things people need to do to put in practice to help themselves.
I mean, you were blown up twice, weren't you, in Afghanistan?
I was blown up 2 times, and I was very grateful and thankful to come out completely unscathed. And unfortunately, not everyone did. I lost people in those situations, but I also lost people who came out without all their limbs and their bits of body. So I'm very grateful to have come out completely
you
unscathed.
were physically unscathed, but it doesn't mean that you don't think about it, worry about it, stress from it.
No.
Have nightmares, all of those things.
Exactly, and there's hundreds of thousands of people in the UK that are suffering with those conditions. But there are things that we can do to help ourselves and to make our minds feel more at peace. And this is what we want to do to help people.
Because what is shocking in all of this, I remember the first time we talked to you and you said you'd known since you left the army, I think it was since you'd left, 11 people you'd known had taken their own lives. And while you've been doing the run, 3 more people you know have taken their own lives. We need to stop. We need to give these people a real sense of having somewhere to turn, because they're clearly in a desperate position.
Yeah, I speak to people on a daily basis. I have close friends even now that are struggling, and their wives, family members are unsure how long they're going to survive for, and it's really upsetting. More needs to be done. There is a lot more that can be done, and we just need to push past those barriers and hopefully get a lot more support both from the armed forces and the government.
I mean, PTSD, which is frankly only a recently coined phrase, isn't it, when you think of the wars that have taken place and the people who have come back suffering. Kathy has got in touch. Morning, Kathy says, I'll be remembering today my father, who was in the 18th Scottish Regiment and was one of the soldiers who relieved Bergen-Belsen, the concentration camp. Although he survived the war, he never got over the sights he saw and suffered from terrible nightmares until he died a few years ago. And these things have always happened. People have always come back.
Shell shock.
Yes, they used to call it shell shock. They used to call it worse things as well, didn't they? Because it was seen as cowardice almost. So it's always been there. And it seems that we still have a long way to go to actually properly helping people.
We've got such a long way to go. We are on the right track where people are talking about things a lot more. People are opening up. And I'm hearing more and more people all the time, and all different generations and ages of people. But there is a long way to go. There's a lot more help that needs to be offered out there to people. But there is a lot of places out there that can help people, but people just don't know where they are, how to approach them, or even when to approach them. A lot of people often say, I don't think I'm bad enough. So it's almost like they've got to wait until they're really bad to get help, which shouldn't be the case. We need to be a lot more proactive as well as reactive.
How important has it been? Because, I mean, obviously we've talked to you, and I know you've been on other media as well. You know, you've got yourself, especially you've been going around the regions, you've done a lot of regional telly and radio and things. And you've won some awards as well since for the work that you've done, which is great. But how important is it that now, I mean, the Head Up as a charity is now building a head of steam, isn't it? It's building a name. How much of a difference have you noticed in people being able to reach out to Head Up just to find out what's going on because you've had some publicity about it? Because that's what people can then latch on to.
Yeah, I think it really helps for someone who's in the position and the power of co-founding a charity and actually seeing them being proactive and out there and talking about their experiences, talking about what they're going to do, how they can offer help to people, rather than them just seeing, something in a newspaper or an article online. They're actually hearing it from the mouths of the co-founders or founders of the charity themselves. And I think that really does help, and people seem to be attracted to that and want to be part of it.
Well, you've done the run. Is the money coming in? Is it still coming in, or have you done all of that too?
Well, we've raised quite a lot of money. We've still got a long way to go.
To chase it up.
Yes, we need to start chasing more people. We need more and more people to be involved. We've still got a long way to go. We're in a 2-year fundraising period. We're just over 1 year now. We've got another year to go, another 11 months to go. So we're still after more people to donate, be involved, maybe even fundraise for our charity as well, which really helps to spread the word. So if anyone does want to help out, please go to our website, which is head-up.org.uk, or Head Up Charity in Google, and you should find us on all social media sites.
And then what happens next? What are your ultimate plans? Will you plan to take over an already existing building, or will you build something entirely new that's specially made for the purpose?
Yes, we're hoping to build our own building, develop our own building where people can come to, and it will be specifically made to help people in multiple different methods of teachings, and also be a 7-day residual stay where they can get away from life and really concentrate on what we're going to be teaching them.
You see, it's interesting, the teaching side of it all, because often you think of getting help and you think, I'm going to go somewhere and I'm going to come back and I'll be better. But this is about saying you're be teaching people, helping people to help themselves for the rest of their lives, hopefully.
Yes, exactly. You know, there's no quick fix in life with anything. It's all about finding different ways which help you to be a more happier and more fulfilled person in life. And we want to give people multiple different ways that they can do this. We've already got an 18-month aftercare package in the way of an app which they can then use each day to progress with the teachings. And also, we'd love to be able to signpost people from our charity to others and vice versa.
Yeah, I was going to ask, is there any one, but there probably isn't any one particular thing that you can say to people that will help? I mean, I suppose, you know, you are not alone, you've got friends is a start, isn't it?
What I would say is there's for the armed forces people, personally, there's over 1,800 specific armed forces charities. Lots of them are local.
1,800?
1,800. There's so many of them. Some of them are very small charities, they're very regionalised, but there's loads out there. And what I would say is just Google, go onto the sites, try and find out what's in your local area, speak to bigger charities, find out who they know that can help you. There's so much help out there. But when you are in a pretty poor mindset, it's difficult to actually pick up that phone or to go online. So if you know someone who's struggling, please go and do it yourself. Go online and find out local charities, places that can help them, and maybe let the charity know about the person that needs the help.
But is it also a fact that the very sort of person you want to reach, being in a very desperate frame of mind, the worst thing he wants to do, or she, is to face up to that problem by going to seek help or by going to counselling or teaching anything?
Yeah, they can really put a victim card on people when they don't really want it, even if they need it, which is kind of what we're doing as our charity. We are open to everyone and anyone. It doesn't matter what their mindset is. So we're very proactive as well as reactive, but it also takes the stigma away of saying, I need to go for help, because anyone can come and use it and just find different ways in how they can improve their mindset.
So with that, how important is it that there must be a lot of people, I mean, what's your experience of this? A lot of people who are going through what we would describe as having some issues, veterans or even serving at the moment, who are going to, and they think they're the only person. Yeah. They don't think anyone else can relate to how they're feeling. How important is it then for those people to know that they are not alone in all of this?
I see this all the time. I've spoken with hundreds and hundreds of veterans face-to-face and armed forces personnel still serving, and they pretty much all think they're alone. They say, I don't know what to do. I don't know what's happened to my emotions and feelings. I feel like I'm a completely different person. And they do generally think like they're the only person going through it, and they're not. And then when I tell them about my experiences and about the hundreds of other people I know, they really start to open up and feel a bit more at ease with themselves. So if anyone is watching and anyone knows someone, just be open and honest, because every single human being, we all have problems. We all have mental health issues at some point in our lives. So it's something that we can share and feel like we're not alone. Yeah.
Yes, I mean, you always have to remind people, don't you? If they had a broken leg, they'd go to a doctor and get it fixed.
Yeah.
And if you do sense that there's something wrong in here and really getting to you, then go and get help.
Do you know what? It surprises me that we're surprised by it, in the sense that I can imagine what you have seen, for example. I can imagine it, but that's totally different to actually being there and seeing it and losing colleagues and all that goes on in the theatre of war. It's no surprise you come back damaged from going through that, is it? I mean, it must be horrific.
Yeah, I mean, to put yourself into a position where you need to go and do the stuff you do on the battlefield, to run through bullets, to see bombs going off, to be in that position of high alertness for months and months, days at a time, you're never going to come back fully the same. And that's the sort of sacrifice armed forces personnel, they make. But there needs to be more to bring people back down, to make them feel at peace and at ease. And that's the one thing that I feel is really lacking with the government and the armed forces at the moment.
Can I ask you, because I was very moved, I mean, you know why, but to see the festival last night and to see the King particularly there and the re-honouring of that commitment that the royal family has to the armed forces, how important is it for you to see that and to see that that baton being passed from the Queen to the King?
I'm not surprised. The royal family have always been huge advocates and very much involved with the armed forces. The armed forces, again, vice versa, we love the royal family. They're people to look up to, but it is very important to see it continuing and to see them showing their support in many different ways.
Paul, as always, pleasure to see it. Throw that website address out again.
Yeah, it's Head Up Charity, head-up.org.uk.
Then if anyone wants to know more, that's where you can go.
Brilliant.
Really good to see you.
Thank you.
You've got another year of fundraising to do. Don't let them talk you into doing another, maybe going around the country a different direction.
In a car.
Yes, in a car. Or a caravan. It'd be much more
but I tell you what, we will stay in touch with you and keep us up to date with that, and we'll talk more in the next 11 months to see how you're getting on. Keep that momentum going.
Yeah, and thank you very much to everybody getting in touch with their stories. Vivian says, my mum served in the Land Army, helping to keep the nation fed. I'll be remembering her today. Also, my dad, who served on the minesweepers, and my grandfather, who went to the Somme and was gassed, and that affected the rest of his life.
James says, I'm going to remember Uncle Bob, who was in the King's Own Scottish Borders Regiment. He was killed in action in Normandy. My dad also served in Africa and Italy.
And Matt has a story for you. I remember my great-grandfather, Michael O'Lohan, 8th Battalion, the City of London Post Office Rifles. One of the PALS battalions. He and fellow post office workers volunteered to serve in the First World War. During the Second Battle of the Somme, he succumbed to gas, which was blown back by the wind onto the advancing British. Disabled by this, he was left out in no man's land for several days, unable to be rescued. Reading several historical accounts, apparently this was quite a common occurrence with live battlefields. Thankfully, he was finally rescued, but not without sacrifice. He lost his earlobes due to frostbite, and the effects of the gas made him sick for the short remainder of his life.
Oh, there are some terrible stories out there, but we need to hear them. We need to hear them. We need to be reminded. And of course, things are going to be happening right across the country, towns and villages right across the UK, marking Remembrance Sunday. But the focus, if you like, is going to be at the cenotaph. And our royal reporter, Cameron Walker, is with those gathering at Horse Guards Parade ahead of what is going to be a hugely impressive march past. 10,000 people we're expecting, Cameron.
That's right, Stephen. Yes, a lot of people are here, 10,000, 9,800 to be exact, and 300 organisations. That's for the Royal British Legion's organised march past. And of course, today is all about honouring those who have lost their lives in the service of their country. But of course, it's also a time of celebrating Britain's armed forces. And I'm joined by two British Army personnel with me today. Captain James Phillips, the second in command of the Prince of Wales Company, and Sergeant Man Limbu, who is a critical care nurse. So, welcome to GB News. Man, I'll start with you first, if that's OK. Your father served in the Falklands War, didn't he? 40-year anniversary this year.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, my father did serve in the Falkland War, and it's a 40th anniversary, and it's just a big moment for him. But sadly, he's not here. He's in Nepal, so I'm here instead. I'm here to on his behalf, and it's a very immense, emotional moment for both of us.
I see. And what challenges did he face serving in the Falklands War?
So he always talked about the geography and the weather condition over there was grim and very difficult. The weight they had to carry was very heavy, all that, along that. But he sadly lost one of his friend, Numbers, which is the person he joined the military together with. And he, every time he brings that up, he becomes really emotional, and we'll be thinking about him along with all the fallen soldiers in Falkland War and other wars as well.
And tell me about your role as a critical care nurse. What are your responsibilities?
So I'm a critical care nurse in 2nd Medical Regiment. Before that, I do look after level 3 ITU patients in the hospital. During COVID, it was quite a difficult situation for us to look after the patient, but there was good teamwork between all the NHS staff, and we managed to, pull through. It's something I will take pride in, and proud of what we achieved.
Definitely a sense of camaraderie there. James, let's have a talk to you about you have quite an important role in training Ukrainian troops to fight Russian aggression, I suppose.
Yeah, so I'm currently training Ukrainian recruits, which is a huge responsibility and something I'm incredibly proud to do. It's a huge responsibility trying to pass on as much knowledge in an incredibly short amount of time to them, to then go back and fight for their country.
And what kind of specific training do you give them?
So we really focus on survivability to start with. Basically keeping them alive for as long as possible, and then lethality, building their training, working in both the rural and urban environments, and then moving on to a range package where we teach them how to shoot and to move together, so they can be as lethal as possible.
Are they fast learners?
Incredibly quick learners. So we've compressed a 28-week course, combat infantryman's course, from 3 weeks for our first 2 rotations, and now we're on a 5-week course. So they are learning a huge amount of information within 5 weeks.
And you've been on operations in Iraq as well, I believe. What was your responsibilities out there?
So we were part of the coalition forces out there. We were responsible for force protection, so moving around advisors and responsible for their security while we were out in Iraq.
And last night you were at the Royal Albert Hall for the Festival of Remembrance, and you marched behind the Book of Remembrance, didn't you? Just describe your experience of yesterday.
Yesterday evening was incredibly moving. It was amazing to be part of and to represent the team that has trained Ukrainian recruits and also the Welsh Guards on this year of remembrance, which is 40 years after the Falklands War, where the Welsh Guards lost a lot of service persons. So yeah, an amazing experience.
And this Remembrance Sunday particularly poignant because your Commander-in-Chief has changed from the late Majesty the Queen to King Charles III. So quite a special moment.
Yes, it is. I think as a person or as a service personnel, there was a very deep understanding between Her Majesty and the armed forces. But we're really proud to serve under His Majesty now, and proud to wear this uniform as well.
What about you, James?
Yeah, so being Welsh Guardsman, we had a very close link to the now King when he was Prince of Wales. So it's I'm incredibly proud to now serve him as King. Yeah.
Thank you both very much for speaking to me on GB News. Appreciate it. Well, the King is expected to lead the nation in remembrance at 11 a.m. and following that, he will be laying a new wreath as King for the first time as sovereign, containing his racing colours and paying tribute to his mother, the Queen, and of course his grandfather, King George VI.
Cameron, thank you very much indeed. Really appreciate that. And we really appreciate how many of you have got in touch this morning with your thoughts memories. Here's just a few that we got with some pictures.
Now, this is Carolyn's nan, Bridget Ann Robertson, served in the Women's Royal Voluntary Service in World War I. Look at her in her uniform.
The medals as well. Barbara's going to be remembering her grandfather, George Green.
Oh, lovely, lovely picture.
He survived until the battle for Ypres and was mentioned in dispatches.
And just after midnight on the 6th of June, Lee's granddad, Samuel Brandon, put on his parachute and climbed into the back of a wooden glider.
Oh.
He was then towed across the channel behind enemy lines before the D-Day invasion began. He was one of those. My goodness.
Wow. And this is an embroidered portrait, it's incredible work, of Kate's father, Edward Ted Pankhurst, in his World War II RAF uniform. That technique's called black work.
It's
They've
very
chosen
clever.
to reflect the sepia of the original photo using cream linen and dark brown threads.
Love it.
Beautiful work, and beautiful that you've been able to share those thoughts, those memories and those relatives with us. Thank you for all of your messages today.
Yeah, like Jeanette's dad and a few of his friends went to volunteer for the army, but before they could be called up, they were conscripted to become Bevan boys, and they were sent down the mines. And, of course, they kept the fires burning, didn't they, all through the war. So remember the Bevan boys too.
There's a lot of people to be remembered, actually, isn't there, for whom we all owe our freedoms today. That's it from us. Up next, it's the political correction, and I'll be back with you actually tomorrow morning as well. Let's look ahead to the weather. In the UK, is going to be generally dry, cloudy in the east, rain moving in for the west. So these are the details for you.
A dry but cloudy day for southwest England, with some low cloud lingering across high ground. Breezy in the west, particularly at the coasts, highs of 15.
Dry across the southeast with sunny spells, although cloudier in the north and west. Light winds and feeling mild, about 16 degrees.
And then dry throughout Wales on Sunday today, with sunny intervals and cloud mostly confined to the east. Breezy at western coasts and highs of 16.
Now, a cloudier day across the Midlands, although some sunnier spells at times, mainly in the south and west. Light winds and feeling pretty warm in any sunshine. Again, those temperatures pretty good, about 15 degrees.
A grey day, though, in the northeast, with some low cloud lingering into the afternoon. Perhaps some brighter spells in the